Hey guys, tonight we slip back, way back, into the creaky wooden sandals of an ancient Greek woman. You wake up not in a comfy bed but on a woven mat beside a low, uneven wall. The air smells like oil, dust, and roasted barley. You hear a rooster screeching like he owns the planet. And above you, the white sky is already pulsing with heat. You're surrounded by worn pottery, drying laundry, and people who've already decided your entire purpose in life before you even get up. You probably won't survive this. But that's okay, it's bedtime. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, where are you tuning in from tonight? Drop your location and local time in the comments. It's fun watching our sleepy little history club stretch across time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with your cheek pressed against cool stone. The floor of the women's quarters, the gyneconitis, as quiet as a temple before sunrise. The only other sound is a soft sweeping, your mother, probably, already brushing yesterday's olive pits and sandal dust into a clay pan. This is not a room with windows. It's a room behind the room with windows. The men's quarters, the andron, get those. You're tucked behind it, like a forgotten letter under a heavier scroll. You pull your himation around your shoulders and glance toward the courtyard. There's no door between your world and that patch of light, just a drape of linen that hangs limp like yesterday's toga. But beyond that, the household stirs. You hear a boy's voice, your younger brother, lucky pest, and the telltale clank of a bronze pot. You rise, and your bare feet slap gently on terracotta. The courtyard smells of last night's ashes and this morning's goat cheese. There's your father, sitting on a bench like a statue come to life, already hunched over papyrus. He doesn't look up. Your job isn't to greet him. You stay in the shadows, quiet as a whisper, and dip water from the cistern to wash your hands. The first thing you notice, as always, is how much isn't yours. This space, technically your home, is shaped by hands that don't belong to you. The clay tiles were placed by male workers. The law that lets your father decide whom you'll marry. Male lawmakers, even the gods you worship, Zeus, Apollo, Poseidon, are mostly male. Occasionally, a goddess pops in, Athena for war and wisdom, Hera for marriage, which is like getting a medal for surviving emotional paperwork. But this courtyard, it's your arena now. As a girl, you're not allowed to wander the streets. You're not welcome in the agora, the public marketplace where men shout about olives and philosophy. You have your world, the domestic one, and today, it starts with sweeping the dust out of the hearth circle and folding the bed linens with geometrical precision. You wonder how your mother does this without ever creasing her brow. She folds like folding is sacred. Your body aches, and you haven't even started grinding grain yet. You tie back your hair, fingers nimble, and trace the braid pattern your cousin taught you. 2 coils, knotted at the nape, pinned under with bronze clips that sometimes tug at your scalp like small curses. There's beauty in the method, but it's not for self-expression. It's for modesty, for order, for your father's status. You might be 10, maybe 11. Historically, girls in classical Athens weren't considered part of society so much as extensions of their father's property. They had no legal identity and couldn't own land. Scholars still argue whether girls received any formal education outside of domestic training. Some wealthier families may have hired private tutors to teach reading and arithmetic. But don't hold your breath. The average girl's syllabus? Spinning, weaving, modesty, obedience. The courtyard brightens as the sun climbs over the neighbor's rooftop fig tree. You listen to bees pummel blossoms with the persistence of unpaid interns. Somewhere beyond the stone walls, men are already debating in the agora. Politics, trade, whether it's impious to eat garlic before prayers. You'll never hear the speeches, but their consequences trickle into your courtyard like spilled wine, things you're expected to mop up. You help your mother prepare the morning meal. It's mostly porridge, barley, thin and bland, with a drizzle of oil if the pantry's being generous. You carry a tray to the men's side of the house, eyes lowered, spine straight, balancing clay bowls like a sleep-deprived waitress from 431 BCE. You don't speak unless addressed, and even then, only in whispers. Once the men eat, The leftovers are yours. You don't mind. You've never known anything else. As you sit with your sisters and mother, you eavesdrop on their talk, quiet, rhythmic, half in code. You learn who's getting married, who's had a difficult labor, which neighbor's son didn't return from battle. This is your social network, and it runs on gossip, sacrifice smoke, and the occasional shared fig. Fun fringe fact? Some ancient Greek women used menstrual rags soaked in wine or vinegar to supposedly balance their humors. Whether it worked or just made everything smell like a tavern is anyone's guess. But you file it away. One day, it'll be your turn to worry about humors and whether your womb is wandering around your body like an unsupervised goat. For now, you go fetch water. You're not allowed out often. But the fountain is nearby, and your mother walks beside you, veil draped like a curtain over your face. You glance around, barely breathing, as a group of boys snicker behind a fig vendor's stall. You ignore them. You're a girl. You get used to ignoring. The amphora is heavy when full, and the handle digs into your arm like a particularly judgmental auntie. But this, too, is your education. You learn how to balance weight, how to listen without responding, how to see without being seen. You pass a shrine, toss in a small offering, crumbs wrapped in linen, and mutter a prayer to Artemis. She's the only one who gets you, goddess of the hunt, protector of young girls, and famously not married. Goals. Back at home, your day spirals into tasks. Weaving. Mostly, the loom is your constant companion. You push the shuttle back and forth, listening to the satisfying clack of thread meeting thread. The textile grows slowly, like ivy. Sometimes your mother tells you to add a pattern, zigzags or fishbones. Nothing too fancy. The cloth isn't for you. It'll become a tunic for your brother or a funeral wrap for someone luckier. Weaving isn't just a chore, it's a metaphor for your life. Linear, repetitive, beautiful from afar but tight, tangled, and full of knots underneath. And yes, here comes the daily philosophical question. What if you'd been born male? You'd be in school, learning poetry and ethics, arguing with bearded men about whether truth exists. Instead, you're perfecting your hem stitch. Historians still debate whether this domestic isolation protected women or oppressed them. Probably both. Probably neither. Probably depends on whether you were rich enough to own a bath sponge. Your father appears in the courtyard, freshly oiled and perfumed. He announces that a guest is coming, some distant cousin or business partner. That means you disappear. Literally, you and your sisters melt into the gyneconitis. The curtain drawn, the lamp dimmed. You listen to male laughter from behind the wall like a ghost eavesdropping on the living. But here's a curious quirk. Some women did influence life outside these walls. Subtly, a well-placed marriage, a whisper in the right ear, a prayer offered at the perfect time. You're taught to believe you have no power. But power has layers. And you're quietly collecting them like coins under a mattress. As night falls, the house softens. You crush herbs, mint and myrrh, for the evening incense. You light a small clay lamp, the flame flickering as you trace your fingers along the wall's grooves. You wonder if your mother once did the same. If her mother before her ever wanted to punch a loom. You settle into your mat again. Body sore, hair still tight from the braids. Tomorrow will be the same. And the day after that. But for now, your breath slows. The courtyard is still, and the only sound is a single olive leaf, drifting gently from the tree above you. Your childhood isn't measured in birthdays. It's measured in chores, hair length, and the number of times adults remind you to sit properly. You don't know exactly how old you are, maybe 8, maybe 11. Numbers aren't your domain. You know your fingers are calloused from the loom and that you're not allowed to speak when men visit. That's enough math for one lifetime. This morning, the sun filters into your room with the softness of milk. But there's no sleeping in. Childhood, in your world, isn't a protected season of wonder. It's a quiet rehearsal for womanhood. And the curtain's already rising. You roll up from your mat and start your morning ritual. Cold water to the face, bracing. Always. You rub your cheeks with a bit of chalky powder. More habit than beauty trick. Your mother believes cleanliness is sacred. You believe chalk is scratchy. Somewhere in between, your face becomes presentable. You dress yourself carefully. A light linen chiton, fastened with bone pins at the shoulders. No embroidery yet, you haven't earned that flair. Your belt is a simple cord. You wrap it twice, tug it tight. Your hair is braided into loops. Practical and demure, you've never seen your own back. But you imagine the braids make it look less like a child's. You step outside into the courtyard. The stones are still damp from morning dew. Your youngest brother, maybe 5, is chasing a chicken with unmatched enthusiasm and absolutely no success. He's squealing like a piglet. You smile, then quickly erase the smile. Smiles are rationed. Today, your tasks begin with the spindle. You sit cross-legged, a basket of raw wool at your side. Fingers already searching for rhythm. Twist, pull, wrap, twist, pull, wrap. It's hypnotic. The wool smells faintly of lanolin and sun. You hum a song under your breath, something old and repetitive and vaguely about goats. Your grandmother used to hum it when she was still alive and still had teeth. The spindle spins in your palm like a secret. You're good at this. Too good. It means more wool will be shoved your way later. A friend arrives, a neighbor girl, about your age, with her mother. They've come to help prepare offerings for the upcoming festival. You're not allowed to attend the whole thing, of course. But girls are occasionally trotted out for the early ceremonies. Dressed like miniature priestesses, flower crowns tight enough to give you a headache. Your friend grins at you. Her teeth are crooked and perfect. You crush barley with her for the ritual cakes. Your hands sticky and white with dough. She tells you her older sister is getting married next week. The groom is 30. You both gag, then laugh, then get scolded for laughing. Girls should not cackle like goats. You whisper instead, about everything. The way the neighbor boy's hair smells like fish. The old woman who yells at pigeons. The statue at the fountain whose nose has been worn down into something deeply inappropriate. You share secrets like crumbs, passing them back and forth to make the day less dry. Historians still argue whether young girls in ancient Greece had genuine friendships or if all relationships were filtered through family duties. If only they could see you now, sneakily braiding daisies into each other's sleeves. As afternoon shadows stretch long like lazy cats, your tutor arrives. Yes, you have a tutor. Not for philosophy or poetry, that's for boys. Silly. Your lessons are different. Domestic instruction. Mostly. Today's topic. The efficient folding of a peplos. With bonus tips on how to keep your veil from slipping while carrying water uphill in sandals. Occasionally, you get snippets of literature. A line of Homer here. A myth about Demeter there. You cling to them like treasures. Once, your tutor recited a fragment from Sappho, the forbidden poetess, and you felt your chest tighten. Like someone had named a feeling you didn't know you were allowed to have. You never told anyone. In the evening, your father's friends arrive. Men with beards, scrolls, and too much olive oil in their hair. You retreat behind the curtain with your sisters. Pretending to be invisible, you listen. They're talking about Sparta, about whether their women are too free. They wrestle. One man says, scandalized. They wear short tunics, says another. You imagine these terrifying Spartan girls, kicking boys and laughing with unbraided hair. The idea thrills and terrifies you. Your sister whispers that maybe you could pretend to be Spartan one day, just long enough to eat dessert first. You smother a giggle into your sleeve. You're summoned by your mother. She needs help preparing the footbath for your father's guests. This means hauling warm water, infusing it with crushed herbs, thyme, rosemary, and kneeling beside sandals that have walked across dusty roads. Goat trails, and possibly crime scenes. You scrub, your hands wrinkle, your pride curls up like a burnt fig. And still, you're just a girl. No one thanks you. After the guests leave, the house quiets. Your mother calls you aside. She unwraps a bundle of cloth. Inside, a delicate necklace made of blue glazed beads. It was mine, she says, and my mother's before me. She fastens it around your neck with fingers that tremble ever so slightly. You don't know what to say, so you just nod. In your world, inheritance is rarely about gold. It's about surviving long enough to hand down something that mattered. Before sleep, you sit with your sisters and whisper stories. Tales of gods and monsters. Not the official versions. Yours are better, sillier, sneakier, with alternate endings where no one dies tragically and everyone gets more figs. You each take turns, voice soft, Words curling into the corners of the room like smoke. A favorite. The one where Athena loses a weaving contest and has to compliment someone else's loom. Everyone agrees it's the most unrealistic part. You fall asleep with your arm flung over your sister's leg, the smell of rosemary still clinging to your fingertips. The next day brings more of the same. That's the funny thing about childhood here, it doesn't build towards something. It's a loop, a slow, careful spiral. You grow taller, you bleed for the first time and are told that the gods are watching now. That your womb is hungry. You're given different clothes. You're kept further inside. Your brother gets a knife. You get a stronger veil. But you still find ways to feel alive. You learn to make music by snapping reeds. You learn how to fake a stomachache on days when the chores pile too high. You discover that if you step just right in the courtyard, the echo makes a satisfying thud. You practice it until someone yells at you. You carve your name into the underside of the loom bench. Just your first initial, but it's there, hidden, permanent. Fun fact buried in the scrolls of fringe history? Some young girls in certain rural areas were taught to interpret dreams. Not publicly, of course. But your grandmother used to say that a dream of snakes meant unexpected change. And a dream of broken pottery meant marriage was close. You once dreamed of a snake biting your father's sandal. You didn't tell anyone, just in case it came true and you were blamed. One day, while sorting lentils, you overhear your parents arguing. Your name is mentioned. You pause, hand deep in the basket, fingers cold from the ceramic. Your mother's voice is tight. Your father's dismissive. You don't know what's being decided, but you know you aren't the one deciding it. You return to your room, lie down on the mat, stare at the ceiling, where a tiny crack winds like a lazy river. You wonder if it leads outside, if your thoughts can float through it and find their way into the sky. Eventually, the argument fades. Decisions are made without you. But still, you breathe, you wake, you learn, you spin thread, you share stories, you exist. And for a girl in ancient Greece, that's already a quiet form of rebellion. You wake to the soft clatter of amphorae being moved in the courtyard. Your father's been preparing for a guest. And the whole household trembles slightly in anticipation. The sun has barely slid over the rooftops, brushing your stone walls with a light so golden it feels borrowed. Someone's sweeping, someone's muttering, and the bread smells slightly burnt. You stretch, still wrapped in sleep's thick fog, and push yourself upright. It's going to be one of those days. You wrap your chitin, pin your shoulder, tighten your belt. Your hair is a little rebellious this morning. Wisps escaping like secrets. You don't fight it. You're tired of being perfect. You're 11, maybe 12 now, solidly in that liminal space where girls are neither cute nor respectable. You're watched more closely these days. You're reminded more often to speak softly, to stand modestly, to be still. Historians still argue whether girls like you, daughters of middle-class citizens, were ever permitted outside unaccompanied. You know the truth. Only under certain conditions. And always cloaked like a shadow. Your mother has chosen you to assist with hospitality, which means you get to practice the deeply spiritual art of appearing helpful without being seen. You fill jugs with watered wine, slice fruit into precise shapes, and refill the incense when it wanes. You glide like a ghost between clay vessels and loud male laughter. A philosopher is visiting today. A man with wild eyebrows and a staff, who arrives talking and seems to forget to stop. He smells like libraries and goat sweat. You're not allowed to stay and listen, of course not, but you hover just close enough to catch fragments. The soul is female until it becomes wise. What is a just city without just women? You wish someone would explain these things. But your questions are usually met with a kind smile and a, "That's not for little ears." So instead, you file the words away and chew on them silently. Like bits of old bread. You're beginning to notice things. Not just about people, but about your own world. How rules seem to shift like sand depending on who's talking. Your brother can leave the house without permission. You must ask just to breathe in the garden. He learns music with a lyre teacher. You learn silence. Still, there are secret pleasures tucked into the day like seeds. Laundry time, for instance. Not the act, gods. No, scrubbing tunics in cold water is brutal on your knuckles and shoulder blades. But the space of it, when the women gather at the public washing basin, There's laughter, gossip, singing that drifts between work like dandelion fluff. You listen more than you speak. You're good at that. There's an older girl there, Nika. She's tall, with a slightly chipped tooth and a scar on her chin from a childhood fall. She jokes with everyone. She knows all the neighborhood drama. She can braid hair in under a minute and does impressions of the priest who always mispronounces Poseidon, like he's got lentils in his throat. One day, as you're wringing out a sheet, she leans in and whispers, "I saw you watching the philosopher." Your heart stutters. "Don't worry," she smirks. "I do it too. Just pretend you're looking at the floor." You smile, not because it's funny, but because someone saw you. That's rare. You walk home with her. And for a moment, you feel like a girl who lives in a story. One of those clever side characters who steals the scene. Just once, with a single sharp glance. That night, during supper, your father mentions marriage, not for you, yet, but in abstract terms. The conversation floats around the table like wood smoke. Your mother says, "The gods favor obedient wives." Your father nods. Your older sister's eyes glaze over like she's halfway to becoming a statue. You chew your olives more slowly. You wonder how it will feel when your name is next. You start noticing married women more. Their veils, their hands, always busy, their posture, so contained. They move through the world like sealed amphorae, closed, painted, permanent. Fringe detail for you? Some women in rural parts of Thessaly were rumored to practice a kind of low-level magic. Disguised as folk remedies, herbalism, they called it, but whispers claimed they could make a man love you or ruin your rival's crops. You wonder, briefly, if those women ever married, or if they lived alone, surrounded by jars. You dream that night of jars that whisper secrets when opened. The next morning, your mother teaches you how to make kaikon, the barley drink said to be sacred. You stir and stir, watching the grain spiral like little stars caught in muddy orbits. She explains its role in festivals. You nod dutifully, but inside, your mind is miles away, wondering what else barley could be turned into. Wondering who decided it had to be this way. You get your first real assignment outside the home. You're sent to visit your aunt with a basket of eggs and dried figs. It's only a few streets over, but it feels like a pilgrimage. You cover your head, you keep your eyes low. You walk quickly. Every sound, goat hooves, a sneeze, a shout, makes your heart jump. But then you pass the potter's stall, and you have to stop. Just for a second. His daughter is shaping a small vessel, her fingers coated in clay. She's maybe 16, with a serious mouth and wrists so strong you're jealous. She catches you watching and gives a tiny nod, not a smile. Just an acknowledgement. The clay spins. Your feet don't. Historians still argue whether Athenian girls ever trained in crafts like pottery or painting. But in this moment, you know what you've seen: competence, power, even in a lump of spinning earth. At your aunt's house, she fusses over your height, your skin, your lack of earrings. She gives you honey cakes and unsolicited advice. Men like girls who don't talk back. She says, "Keep your head down and your eyes clever." You pretend to understand. You thank her. You walk home with one more weight on your shoulders. That evening, your older sister cries. No one explains why. She's sent to her room with an herbal compress and a sharp whisper from your mother. You overhear the word, betrothed. Later, you see her silently folding her favorite dress into a small sack. She doesn't speak. She just wraps the fabric like it might run away. The wedding is set for 2 weeks from now. You'll be helping, dressing her, plaiting her hair, placing the combs and pins exactly where she's instructed. She's quiet during preparations. You ask her if she's excited. She says, "I'm ready." You nod. You don't believe her. The house fills with women and smoke and rose oil. There's music. There's cake. But in the corner, where your sister waits, her hands grip the table like it might vanish. You walk her to the threshold that night. She turns once, looks at you, and says, "Don't grow up too fast." It's the first real advice she's ever given you. You don't respond. You just stand there, holding the end of her veil, like an anchor. And then she's gone. You lie awake for hours that night. Everything feels too still. Even the moon seems to avoid your window. The next day, your mother says you'll be helping more now. You're the eldest girl. She says, "We need your hands." So you rise earlier. You work harder. You spin faster. But somewhere inside, a little room of your soul stays closed. Locked. Waiting. Remember Nika? She stops coming to the washing basin. You ask around. Someone says she's moved. Someone else says she got sick. You don't get an answer. Just one less voice in your day. But you keep walking by the potter's stall. You keep stealing glances at that girl and her spinning clay. You keep remembering. Because even in a world where your name might never be recorded, you still leave echoes. A laugh. A braid. A jar with your initials scratched on the bottom. And sometimes, in the quiet before sleep, you whisper your own name, just to hear it out loud. The days grow longer, not just because of the sun, but because you're older now. Not grown, not a woman yet, but almost. Nigh on marriageable. Someone chuckles once, and you feel your stomach drop like a stone in a dry well. You've learned to move through the house like smoke, to read your mother's expressions like a scribe reads scrolls. Today, she's tense. Her lips are pressed so tightly they might seal forever. You don't ask why. You just keep stirring the lentils and watching the steam curl upward like prayers too shy to speak. Outside, cicadas scream their eternal song. Inside, the loom creaks as you resume your weaving lessons. The threads tighten under your fingers. You're getting good at this. Actually, the pattern is beginning to emerge. And for once, it feels like yours. A row of triangles, then a band of waves. Your mother corrects your tension, but not your design. Small victories. Weaving, it turns out, is more than just housework. It's your language, your territory. A tapestry is like a diary. If you look hard enough, your mother weaves lozenges, safe, respectable, neat. You try a spiral one day, and she frowns. Don't waste thread on foolishness. You say nothing, but you don't unpick it either. It stays. A single act of rebellion. Mainstream historians agree that weaving was the cornerstone of a woman's duty in the oikos, your household sphere. What they don't always highlight is how much symbolism and storytelling could be woven into even the plainest cloth. Some say women used patterns to express feelings they couldn't voice aloud. Imagine entire family dramas hidden in border stitching. A secret heartbreak encoded in crimson thread. You once overheard a visitor praise his wife's silence and excellent textile work. Your mother called it the highest compliment. You were 8. You thought it sounded like a prison sentence stitched in wool. Still, you do your work. You're a dutiful daughter, after all. But something's changed. You've started thinking in questions. Why must our threads always run straight? Why can't women speak in the symposium? Or even attend it? Why is it that the most beautiful thing you'll ever make will likely be worn once and buried with you? One morning, you're sent to the market for onions and thread. Your sandals slap against the sun-baked road. You keep your head low. This is your 5th solo errand, an invisible milestone. You start counting them like the potter's girl counts rotations on her wheel. At the market, the air is thick with goat musk and roasted garlic. You pass the herb stall, bright green bundles tied with twine, and there she is again. The old woman with the single golden eye. Okay, not literally gold, but it gleams so strangely in the light you're convinced she's at least half oracle. She's muttering over a pot of crushed leaves. You hear her say, "Keep rosemary near your door to guard against dreaming men." You blink. Dreaming men? You don't ask. You just tuck that phrase away for later. Like always. You buy your thread. You forget the onions. At home, your mother scolds you. You apologize. She says, "A woman must keep a full mind and an empty mouth." Another phrase for the tapestry. That night, the moon hangs low and yellow like a coin dipped in honey. You find yourself at the window, gazing out over rooftops and trying to remember the names of constellations. Your brother used to recite them. He has a tutor, of course, but you only caught fragments. Now you make up your own. That star cluster? Clearly a sleeping cat. That one? A woman holding scissors. There's a story your aunt once told you, quietly, while braiding your hair, about a girl who turned into a bird to escape marriage. Not a swan or a dove. A crow. Black and cunning. You liked that story more than the ones with weddings. So the days stack. Chores. Meals. Weaving. You track your months now by your bleeding, which has started and arrived like an unwanted visitor bearing no gifts. Only responsibilities. Your mother gives you a cloth belt and a short nod. She doesn't say welcome to womanhood. She just says, don't get lazy. You wonder if your sister felt like this. Like her body wasn't entirely hers anymore. Here's a quirky detail. Some wealthier households used menstrual rags embroidered with family symbols, yes. Even on those, pride stitched into everything. Imagine bleeding onto your own initials. You laugh a little at that. Quietly. Now the wedding talk begins again. And this time your name is in the middle of it. You don't meet the boy, not yet. But your parents have tea with his parents. There's talk of land, of dowry, of temperament. Your mother asks if you've been practicing your hymns. You nod. You have not. But you do start singing in your head while you work. Quiet little war songs. Historians still argue whether young brides had any real say in their marriages. Most evidence suggests not. It was the business of fathers. The signing of contracts. The mixing of households. You are a piece being moved across a board. And yet, you start planning escape routes. Not literal ones. You're not that dramatic. But tiny resistances. You teach yourself to whistle. Just barely. Just under your breath. You begin reading aloud to yourself when alone. A habit your mother would frown upon. You start collecting phrases, funny ones, sharp ones, from overheard gossip. You try on adulthood like a borrowed cloak. Too heavy. Too long. Not quite your shape. One afternoon, you pass the potter's stall again. The girl is gone, but her father nods at you. You stop, bold move, and ask, will she be back? He looks up from his wheel. Gone to her husband's house. He says, that's it. That's the story's end. You nod, walk on, say nothing, but inside, 1,000 amphorae shatter. At night, you dream of cities where women wear swords like bracelets, where weaving is a weapon, where names are never forgotten. Then morning comes, and you're back at the loom. The pattern is almost finished. A band of waves, a spiral, a single crooked line where you let your hands slip. You decide not to fix it. Let the mistake stand. It's yours. You wake to the smell of honey cakes. That's how you know something's up. Honey isn't for everyday use, it's too precious. Too golden. Too much like something only the gods should touch. But this morning, it's thick in the air, drifting from the kitchen hearth like a promise you never made. Your mother is humming. That, too, is a clue. She only hums when company's coming, or when something costly has been arranged. And sure enough, by midday, the house has been swept within an inch of its life. You're handed fresh linen. Your hair is combed until it pulls. And there's a glint in your mother's eye that makes your spine go cold. Today, you meet him. The boy. The one they've chosen. He arrives with his father. His cloak too clean and his sandals suspiciously new. He smells of olive oil and nervous sweat. You are told to sit quietly. He is told to admire the weaving. He does. Or pretends to. Fine work. He says. You nod. That's all. What do you say to the man who will someday share your roof? Your bed. Your life? Apparently nothing. The adults talk. You sip watered wine and try not to exist too loudly. He asks if you sing. You lie and say yes. He smiles. Relieved. You both know this doesn't matter. You could be mute and it would still happen. Historians say most betrothals were finalized with a handshake between fathers, sometimes over a simple meal. Sometimes with an entire feast. What you see now is somewhere in the middle. The food is good, the conversation stiff, and you are more decorative than the garland on the table. Here's something strange. In some parts of Greece, the bride and groom didn't speak to each other at all until after the wedding. No rehearsals, no trial period, just ceremony, then shared life. When they leave, your mother exhales so deeply you wonder how long she'd been holding her breath. That went well, she says. You're not so sure. You return to the loom. But your hands shake. You miss a stitch. Unravel it. Start again. You whisper the phrase to yourself. Fine work. Like a curse. The days after that unfold like a scroll you're not allowed to read ahead. Preparations begin. Not for a wedding. No. Not yet. But for the next big stage of the girl-to-woman conveyor belt. Your departure from childhood. Your father makes arrangements with a seer. This is traditional. They want to ensure your body is clean. Your omens favorable. You're not entirely clear on what he sees. Or how. But you know the result. Your wedding will proceed. Unless the gods hurl thunderbolts in protest. They don't. Instead, you're taken to bathe in a sacred spring. The water is freezing. The stones slippery. You try not to think of the other girls who've stood here, shivering, scrubbing away their girlhood. You try not to think of your sister, or her pyre. Your mother rubs oil into your arms afterward. Her touch is gentle but quick. Efficient, not affectionate. She says, "This is how we honor Hera." You want to ask, which Hera? The queen, the jealous wife, the goddess of weddings or the goddess of grudges? But you don't. You nod. You dry your skin. You stand still as she paints your eyelids with ground ash and olive soot. At dinner, your father offers a libation to Zeus. Your brother, not much older, but already allowed at the table, says something stupid about dowries. And you fight the urge to throw olives at his face. Instead, you smile. The good daughter. The prize about to be passed from one house to another like a very polite hostage. There's a story you remember hearing in a dream, of a girl who disguised herself as a soldier and slipped onto a ship. She fought in battles and sang songs at campfires and no one ever guessed. When she died, they buried her with her sword and called her the Silent Brother. You like that, still do. You start saving scraps of thread, not for anything practical, just to have them, just to hide something that's yours. Here's the part they don't always talk about, the in-between days. The ones after you know you're leaving. But before it happens, when everything is suddenly more precious and more unbearable. The fig tree you've climbed since childhood. The way the floor creaks under your favorite windowsill. Your mother's terrible humming. Your own bed. Even the cat seems to know. She starts sleeping on your lap more often. Maybe it's the oil in your skin. Maybe it's the stillness. You hold her longer than usual. Bury your face in her fur. And whisper secrets into her ears. She blinks like she already knows them. The wedding date is set. Your dowry is prepared, cloth, jewelry, a small chest of coins. It's both generous and not enough. Nothing would be. One morning, a woman arrives with herbs and combs and instructions. You are to be prepared for marriage. Not just cleaned and dressed, but instructed in the ways of keeping a husband's house. She teaches you how to grind spices without making noise. How to pour wine without looking directly at your guest. How to speak softly but clearly when reciting prayers. She also tells you something the men never will. The key to surviving a marriage is knowing when to seem slower than you are. And when not to flinch. You don't flinch then, but you want to. Historians debate whether such marriage tutors were common or only for wealthy households. Some say these women were hired aunts of sorts, guardians of knowledge. Bitterly wise. Others believe they were more like chaperones, keeping girls pure through tight supervision. You believe this woman is both and neither. She smells like myrrh and dust. And you think she's been through more than she'll ever admit. You ask her one night, "What if I want something else?" She pauses, looks you over, then says, "Then you'll have to make it without being seen." Not the most uplifting pep talk, but honest. Your final unmarried festival is the Baronia. You walk with other girls, all clad in saffron robes, to the sanctuary of Artemis. You sing, you dance, you pretend to be a bear. Yes, a bear. It's symbolic. Something about taming wildness. About crossing the threshold from beast to bride. You twirl with the others under torchlight, your robes catching fire orange glow. It should feel magical. It feels like a farewell party you didn't plan. Quirky detail. In some towns, girls offered toys from their childhood to Artemis as part of the ritual. Dolls, carved animals, even rattles. You offer a comb made from olive wood. It still has a few strands of your sister's hair in it. No one notices, or if they do, they don't speak of it. After the festival, the house quiets. The loom is covered. The oil lamps burn low. Your mother braids your hair tighter than ever before and says, "Tomorrow, you become a woman." You don't sleep much that night. You think about the potter's daughter, the old woman with the gold eye, the crow girl in the story. You think about the thread you've saved, tucked under your sleeping mat like contraband. You dream of a city with no walls, where women run barefoot through gardens and no one locks their stories away in cloth. Then the rooster crows, and it's time. Your wedding day begins before the sun. You're pulled from your bed by a pair of women who barely speak. They bathe you with water so cold it feels like penance. They scrub your skin until it glows. Your limbs are raw, your mind still fogged with half dreams of bear dances and broken cones. They rub oil into your arms. Sweet-smelling stuff. Probably imported, luxury you'll wear just this once. One of them hums an old lullaby as she works. And for a moment, you forget where you are. Until she tightens the sash at your waist and says, "Stand up straight." The dress is white, not the pure, pristine white of modern fantasy weddings, but more of an off-cream. The color of fresh cheese or plaster drying in the sun. It drapes heavy over your shoulders, bound at the waist and pinned at the shoulders with ornate brooches. You wear no veil, not yet. That comes later. Your mother enters. Her eyes are red. You can't tell if she's been crying, or if she's just exhausted. She adjusts the brooch on your left side, then pulls back, doesn't speak, just looks. Then she leaves. You will not see her again for a while. Mainstream historians describe Greek weddings as 3-day affairs full of ritual and symbolism. They are not wrong, but they rarely dwell on how disorienting it is to be the center of such a whirlwind. You are paraded, gifted, sung over, touched, dressed, undressed, redressed, blessed, and fed, all while maintaining the posture of a statue and the silence of a temple. The first stage is the proaulia, the day before. You've already lived it. That's when you made your offering to Artemis, bathed, and said farewell to your maidenhood. That was yesterday. It already feels like someone else's memory. Now, it's the gamos, the main event. The house smells of roasting lamb and fresh bread. Your father is in high spirits, loud in a way you rarely see. He makes toasts. He laughs. He slaps your brother on the back so hard the boy nearly spills his wine. You sit, quiet, on a special stool, a wedding seat. Someone ties a ribbon around your wrist and murmurs something about binding fortunes. You don't understand the phrase. You don't ask. The groom arrives just before dusk. You've seen him once, but now he looks different. More polished, like someone ironed the humanity out of him. His cloak is crimson, his hair slicked back with olive oil. He looks older, somehow, or maybe just more sure of himself. He smiles at you, not unkindly. That's something. The meal begins. Women, technically, aren't supposed to eat at the same table as men. But this is your wedding. You're allowed to sit near the main feast, on the edge of the circle. Like a spectator who accidentally wandered into the arena. You nibble at honeyed nuts. You sip wine, not too much. Your stomach is tight with nerves. The songs begin. Wedding hymns sung by your female relatives and friends. They tease the groom, praise your beauty, recount old myths about Hera and Zeus. You're half listening until someone mentions a tale you've always loved, the story of Harmonia, daughter of Aphrodite, who was gifted a cursed necklace on her wedding day. The necklace brought beauty and doom. You smile faintly. Appropriate. Then comes the anacalypteria, the unveiling. The groom lifts your veil for the first time. You didn't even realize someone had placed it over your head. His hands are careful. He looks into your eyes, then nods, like he's accepted a trade. Like your fine livestock. You're led outside. The procession begins. This part is surreal. Torches light the street. Women ululate and sing. Your bridal cart is pulled through the neighborhood by mules or donkeys. And your dowry follows in another cart behind. Neighbors peek out. Some throw rice or nuts. Children shout rude things. Someone sings off-key. The groom walks beside you, holding the reins with one hand and a torch with the other. You don't speak. He doesn't either. But you feel his presence like heat. Constant. Inescapable. This is the ectosis, the literal, giving away. Your father hands you off, officially transferring you from one oikos to another. You no longer belong to your birth household. You are property again, but now, his property. Scholars still debate whether women had any say in this ritual. Some argue that a few cities allowed for limited choice, or at least the chance to reject a match. Others insist it was entirely formal, with no room for protest. You lean toward the latter. You arrive at your new home. It's darker than you expected. Colder, too. The walls are unfamiliar. The air smells different, less like hearth smoke and more like wax and leather. The slaves are quiet, unsure of you. Your new mother-in-law greets you. Her smile is small but tight, like a drawn bow. She gives you bread, then figs. You eat both. This is symbolic. Sharing food to signify welcome. You try to swallow without choking. The final ritual of the night is private. You are led to the bridal chamber. Veiled again. Your groom follows. The door closes. There are no witnesses in this part of the story. Not officially, but you suspect someone always listens. The bed is wide. The room, candlelit. You stand awkwardly, unsure of where to look. He approaches, not rushing. He speaks, finally, says something about how beautiful you looked in the torchlight. You nod. The moment is neither horrifying nor romantic. It is quiet, mechanical, unfolding like a play you weren't handed the script for. You think of Harmonia and her necklace, of Artemis and her bears, of the crooked spiral in your weaving. Then it's over. He falls asleep quickly. You stare at the ceiling and count the flickers of the candlelight until your eyes burn. The next morning, you're awakened early. The entire household is waiting. There is food, laughter. Your veil is lifted again. The bedding is examined. Your virtue is confirmed. Congratulations are offered. Your new mother-in-law gives you a gold bangle. Your father-in-law calls you a fine addition. You smile, because that's the only tool you have. You're now a Jain, a wife. No longer a maiden. No longer under your father's roof. It's a promotion and a sentence. All in one. Later, you're left alone in the women's quarters. You unpack your dowry items. Arrange your brushes and oils. Refold your cloths. You place your hidden threads at the bottom of a chest. You do not cry. Instead, you begin sketching new patterns in your head. Spirals and waves and a new motif, something jagged and sharp. A memory, a spell, a truth. You are a wife now. But you are still a woman with hands. And hands can make things. Even in silence. You wake in a bed that still feels foreign, though the scent of last night's oil and smoke lingers faintly in the sheets. The light filters through a shuttered window, soft and filtered like the hush of a secret. You sit up slowly. Your limbs are sore, not from romance but from the sheer strangeness of everything. How your life has shifted like sand underfoot. How nothing fits quite right. There is no honeymoon. That's not a thing. Instead, there is a new rhythm to learn. A new house, a new role, and a new set of eyes always watching. You are no longer preparing for life. You're living it. Welcome to the domestic routine of an Athenian wife. Your mornings begin early, always, whether you feel like it or not. The house stirs before the sun and you with it. Servants creak past your door with jugs of water. You hear pots being set over flames. Someone is already grinding grain in the courtyard, the rhythmic crunch of pestle and stone. It's oddly comforting, like a heartbeat. You rise and wash your face. No mirrors, just polished bronze. You look like someone else in it. Someone older, wiser? No, just tired. The women's quarters are yours now. The gynoecium, tucked deep inside the house, away from visitors and sunlight. Think of it as a combination sewing room, nursery, pantry, and fortress of invisibility. This is your kingdom, and your cage. Men rarely enter. The outside world rarely peeks in. You move from chore to chore. Small tasks binding your hours like links in a chain. First, the loom. Always the loom. Wool to be spun. Threads to be measured. Cloth to be planned. Your hands remember more than your heart does. The movement soothes you. The fiber pulling tight under your fingers like a line tethering you to something solid. Historians agree that weaving wasn't just a domestic duty, it was symbolic. Women's morality was woven into cloth. A good wife was industrious with her spindle. Your entire social worth was calculated in how much thread you could quietly produce. Yes, you can hear your mother's voice. Loose threads mean a loose woman. Charming. You oversee the slaves next. They're mostly women, and some are barely older than you. One is named Thalia. She never meets your eye. She flinches when spoken to. Works twice as hard as the others. You wonder where she's from. What her name meant, before it became hers here. You're expected to manage them kindly but firmly. Not all mistresses do, but you remember being led. Quiet and uncertain. Just days ago. So, you speak softly. Give clear instructions. Correct, but do not humiliate. Your husband doesn't notice, but the girls do. Next comes food. You do not cook. That's beneath your rank, but you plan meals. Bread must be baked, lentils boiled, olives counted, cheese cut. You pace through the kitchen, checking storage jars, noting which amphorae are low. You hold one up and sniff, sharp vinegar. Time to rotate stock. You also brew the kaikon today, a barley and herb drink. Sometimes spiked with mint or honey. Not delicious, but serviceable. It's your mother-in-law's favorite, so you make it with care. She's been less prickly since your wedding. Still stern, still suspicious, but less barbed. The household hums like a hive. Everyone has a role, a station, a duty. You stay mostly in your realm, out of the men's path. The front rooms are not for you, unless a visitor's wife arrives, or unless someone needs you for a ceremonial appearance. You stay back, always back, and yet, your influence ripples in the quiet. You know which stores are full, which slave is lazy, which child has a fever. You whisper instructions to the nursemaid. You choose the wool color for the next blanket. You rearrange the cedar in the storage chest to keep out moths. You matter here, but not loudly. At midday, you rest. The walls of the gynoecium keep the summer heat trapped, so you lie near the threshold where the breeze occasionally sneaks in. You sip watered wine. You sketch out a pattern in your mind for the next cloth. Maybe ivy vines. Or dolphins, something that moves. The days begin to blur. You no longer rise unsure of the ceiling above you. The kitchen smells familiar now. Your footsteps don't creak as they did that first week. You learn which floor tiles squeak. You learn the name of the old house slave who lost her teeth. You learn to speak softly but with command. Even the dog respects you now. There's a strange, brief peace to it. Historians argue whether women like you felt contentment. Some suggest domesticity provided safety, routine, and small joys. Others point to the confinement, the lack of choice, the invisibility. But you suspect the truth is less dramatic. You don't feel joy. You don't feel misery. You feel presence. You are present in each task. And that is its own kind of survival. One afternoon, a neighbor visits with her daughter. They sit in your courtyard, gossiping under the fig tree. You serve honeyed water and figs. Nod politely. Smile when needed. Then the conversation turns to childbirth. And suddenly, the fig tastes sour. You're reminded. A wife's duties don't stop at weaving. They culminate, inevitably, in motherhood. Your neighbor laughs about her fourth labor, miming a groan, and everyone chuckles, even you, but your smile is thin. You glance down at your stomach. Flat, for now. The pressure is unspoken, but it builds. That evening, your husband enters the women's quarters. Rare, he brings you pomegranate seeds in a little clay bowl. Says nothing, just offers them. You eat one, then two. He smiles faintly, places a hand on your shoulder, and leaves. It's an omen, you think, or a bribe, maybe both. You remember Persephone and the seeds that tethered her to the underworld. How eating even one meant she couldn't fully leave. You wonder if these seeds do the same to you, anchor you here. Deeper into this life. Another day, another pattern begun. You sit at the loom, guiding thread through warp, building fabric from nothing but patience and skill. As your fingers work, you listen to the street sounds outside, a cart rolling over stones, a boy shouting, a dog barking, all of it distant, like the echo of another life. One you might have had you not eaten the seeds. A fringe fact for the curious. Some ancient Greek wives trained birds, yes, birds, to carry messages between neighboring households, especially during times of war or political unrest, when men were away and women had to run estates alone. There's no proof you do this, but you like the idea of it. A secret dove, landing on the windowsill, carrying a strip of linen with just 3 words, still here. Yours. You imagine it as you fall asleep that night. In the dark, the house creaks, the hearth dies down, the soft breathing of slaves and kin and maybe a mouse fill the silence. You lie still, not unhappy, not triumphant, just real, rooted, in the quiet folds of this life you did not choose, but are learning to shape. Thread by thread. You miss the moon. Not the moon itself, it's still there, silvering the courtyard at night, hanging beyond the shuttered window like a quiet witness. But you miss seeing it, feeling it cool on your skin. In your father's house, you used to sneak onto the roof, lie on the tiles, and trace constellations with your finger. Now, your roof time is strictly limited. Dignified wives don't clamber up buildings barefoot. Instead, you count moon cycles through rituals, offerings, bleeding, the cold click of a jug set out for Hecate at the crossroads. You begin to chart your body. You know your time is near when your belly cramps, your appetite vanishes, and your dreams get louder. You're watching yourself as a stranger now, mapping signs, decoding your own biology in the silence of the women's quarters. Your mother-in-law notices first. She doesn't say anything, just watches you from across the courtyard with a face that could pass for marble. Later, she leaves a piece of barley bread on your windowsill. No words, just carbs. It's the closest thing to a high five you'll get from her. And then one morning, you vomit into the basin before your feet even hit the floor. So, that answers that. The nursemaid is the first to confirm it, pressing her wrinkled hands to your belly and nodding as though she's reading a prophecy. Your husband is told at dinner. Between bites of roast chicken, he sets his goblet down and says, "Ah, then. Good." Then he resumes eating. You can't tell if he's pleased or relieved or just neutral. Pregnancy in ancient Greece is both sacred and suspicious. You are now a vessel, both revered and tightly monitored. Every movement of your body becomes significant. Every craving, omen, every dream gets dissected by someone who swears their cousin's cousin saw a goat eat an olive branch and then gave birth to twins. Mainstream history likes to romanticize the idea of fertility as power. And sure, there's power in creation, but it's not the superhero kind. It's the hope you don't die before naming the baby kind. Your routine changes. Less weaving, more resting. You're given better food, better oil for your skin, even your own personal stool for squatting when needed. Everyone suddenly acts like you might snap in half. No one lets you carry water. You kind of miss the chores. You become a womb with legs. The women's quarters shift around you like a murmuring tide. The nursemaid offers unsolicited advice about breathing and gods. The other wives in the neighborhood send little bundles of cloth, each wrapped in lavender. You receive so many offerings to Elethea, goddess of childbirth, that your altar looks like a market stall. You start dreaming more vividly. Wild dreams, filled with snakes and storms and rivers that speak in riddles. You keep a piece of charcoal under your pillow to ward off the more disturbing ones. The nursemaid suggests sleeping with an olive twig tucked into your sash. It helps, a little. The months blur. You expand. You start waddling. Someone finally tells you that your face glows, which is polite code for, you look like a ripe fig. You laugh. Then you cry. Then you laugh again. You're told not to cry too much. It might unbalance your humors. One afternoon, you sit beneath the fig tree and feel a flutter. A movement, just under the skin, like a fish twitching in a net. Your breath catches. You place your hand there. And you wait. It happens again. That's the moment it becomes real. You start talking to the baby after that. When no one is around, you whisper little jokes, hum bits of old songs, explain what olive trees are. You say things like, "You're not allowed to have 6 toes." Okay. And, "Please be nicer than your father's cousin." It helps. But not everything is peaceful. You hear stories of women who bled too early, of babies born cold and silent, of mothers who screamed for days and never woke up. The nursemaid has a terrifyingly casual tone when describing breech births or slippery labors. You learn about birthing stools, heated stones, herbal brews that taste like punishment. You learn there is no such thing as a painless birth, only quicker ones. Historians still argue whether Athenian midwives were trained or just experienced. Some believe there were specific women, often older and respected, who acted as de facto medical experts for childbirth. Others claim it was just a group effort, relying on tradition, luck, and stamina. Either way, your fate will be in their hands. There's no doctor. There's no morphine. There's no guarantee. One quirky fact you overhear: in some households, a scorpion carved on a piece of ivory is placed under the bed to ward off evil spirits during labor. You don't know if it works, but it's definitely more stylish than olive twigs. By the time your 9th month begins, you barely sleep. You can't lie flat. Your ankles resemble small loaves of bread. Everyone keeps saying, "Any day now," like it's encouraging. It isn't. It feels like you're standing on the edge of something massive, towering, inevitable. You prep the room. The birthing stool is cleaned. Linens are aired. A basket of herbs is set beside the door. The nursemaid whispers that she's hidden a sharp knife under the bed. Just in case. You don't ask why. Then it starts. Slow at first. Just a cramp. A deep one. Lower than usual. You keep weaving. The pain comes again. Sharper. You pause mid-thread. Again. Again. You nod to the nursemaid. She nod back. Word spreads like a wind. You're laid on the bedding. Women file in. Your husband does not. This is not his realm. This is women's work. Women's war. You sit on the birthing stool. Legs apart. Hands gripping the carved handles like you're clinging to a sinking ship. The pain builds. Then it breaks. Then it builds again. You lose track of time. The world narrows into a tunnel of breath and fire. Someone presses water to your lips. Someone wipes your brow. You scream once. Just once. And they tell you that's a good sign. The baby comes like a wave breaking open your body. And then there's silence. You can't hear. You can't feel. And then, crying. Sharp. Furious. Glorious. They hold the baby up. Bloodied and squirming. And you sob. Not because it's over. But because it isn't. Because you're still here. It's a girl. The room hushes. You watch the faces around you. Disappointment flickers in one. Relief in another. The nursemaid says, "She's strong." Loud. Then adds, "More gently. More will come." They clean the baby and hand her to you. You cradle her. Skin against skin. She smells like salt and something ancient. Her fingers curl around yours. You whisper her name. No one else hears it yet. Just you. In the days that follow, you stay in bed. Your body aches in new places. Your hair tangles. Your milk comes. You feed her at night while the house sleeps, humming the same lullabies your mother sang. A month later, you take her to the hearth for the amphidromia, a private family ritual that welcomes the child officially into the household. You carry her around the fire. Clockwise. Her father names her aloud. She is now real to the household. She has a place, an identity. You wonder what her loom will look like. You wonder if she'll like olives. You wonder how to raise her so she remembers to look at the moon, even if only through a shuttered window. Your daughter's name echoes softly through the courtyard, spoken, repeated, then folded into daily use. You try it out in different moods. Gentle in the morning, sharp when she spits up wine, thinned goat milk. A name is more than a sound here. It's a tether, tying her to the house, the ancestors, the family gods. You've given her roots. Now begins the long unfolding. Infancy in ancient Greece isn't cuddles and lullabies, not exactly. It's survival. You cradle her close, constantly, like she might vanish between blinks. Because sometimes they do. There's no concept of baby-proofing. In your world, only luck, superstition, and constant, sleep-deprived vigilance. You notice everyone else watches her with a blend of hope and reserve. A little distance. Infants aren't named publicly until the 7th or 10th day, after the danger of early death begins to shrink. Even then, no one counts their olive branches before they sprout. You notice the nursemaid never refers to her as girl until after the amphidromia. She just calls her the little one. Each day she survives, she becomes more real. Your routines warp around her. The loom gathers dust. You barely go outside. You feed her, bathe her, hum to her, swaddle and unswaddle her. When she fusses, you rock her against your chest while muttering threats to ghosts. Not actual threats, just sleepy sass. Go on then, spirit, try something. I haven't slept in 3 days and I'm armed with fennel and a stare that could spoil milk. Colic, by the way, is timeless. And while modern scholars like to quote Hippocrates when they talk about ancient child rearing, detailing humors, moistness, or balance, real life isn't quite so tidy. You trust the nursemaid more than any dusty scroll. When she rubs chamomile on your daughter's belly and swears it will help, you believe her, not because of medical evidence, but because the nursemaid says so and then it works. Historians still argue whether Greek women breastfed their own children or handed them over to wet nurses. The answer? Depends. You feed your daughter yourself. That's your choice, or maybe your household just didn't have a slave nurse. Either way, your nights are now tethered to the rhythm of her cries. Your own body surprises you. You're sore, tired, leaking, And absolutely not in the mood for your husband's sudden return of interest. He's patient, mostly, but the pressure simmers. You've done your duty. After all, isn't it time to go back to being a wife? You ignore him for another week. Meanwhile, child care folklore floods in. When your baby sneezes, a neighbor says it's a good sign, her soul hasn't escaped. When she smiles in her sleep, it means she's dreaming of the gods. When she frowns, someone mutters, she's seen a spirit. You consider installing garlic on every doorframe, but settle for smudging the nursery corner with herbs. Let's talk diapers, or the lack thereof. You use linen cloths, sure, but accidents happen. You learn to read her face like storm clouds. When her eyebrows furrow a certain way, you grab a rag. It's not glamorous, but you get shockingly fast at it. And there's a kind of hilarity in watching your high-status husband go pale when she pees on his tunic. She grows fast. Her fingers learn your necklace first, pulling it, chewing on the beads, then your hair, then the cat's tail. She babbles in vowels, then shrieks in operatic tones when denied honey. You introduce her to sunlight in tiny doses, holding her up like a sacred offering. Her skin tans quickly, her toes curl at the breeze. The milestones begin. She laughs one day, out loud, startled by the jingling of bronze anklets. You laugh with her, a laugh that carries across the courtyard and into your bones. Another day, she claps for the first time. Your mother-in-law calls it good omen. Your husband simply grunts in approval. One fringe practice you learn from your neighbor. Tie a red thread around her ankle. It wards off the Bascania, the evil eye. You do it, even though your rational brain rolls its eyes. Because, why not? It's not like the gods have been sending you clear instructions. At 6 months, your daughter sits up unassisted. At 9, she crawls straight into a basket of figs. At 11, she calls the nursemaid Bob, and the entire house cheers like she's won the Panathenaic Games. Now here's a question. What kind of life is she being raised into? You've thought about this. You're a woman, raising a woman, inside a system that doesn't really see women as fully finished people. You'll train her in spinning and weaving. You'll teach her songs, rituals, manners. Eventually, she'll be prepared for marriage, like you were. But there's a quiet rebellion in how you cradle her, in how you whisper jokes instead of rules. You tell her stories the men never hear. You introduce her to Artemis before Hera. You sing of Atalanta and her bow, not just Penelope and her patience. Maybe she'll dream wider, but dreaming wide is dangerous. At 2, she walks like she owns the place. Her curls bounce with every stomp. She feeds bits of bread to the household dog. She gets scolded for climbing onto the bench, then does it again. She's fearless. You want to bottle her spirit, keep it intact until she's old enough to choose for herself. But the world has other plans. Already, your mother-in-law comments that she's too bold, that you should discipline her soon, before it sets in. Sets in? What? Like mildew? You don't say that aloud. You just nod and change the subject. Preschool doesn't exist, of course. But the household is her classroom. She watches everything, mimics everyone. You see her pick up a spindle and awkwardly twist it, frowning. You see her imitate the nursemaid's prayer gestures. You see her steal olives when no one's looking. At 3, she gets her first real scolding, from you. She throws a clay bowl, just to see it break. The shards echo through the corridor. You take her hand, kneel, look her in the eyes, and speak slowly. She cries. You hold her afterward. It's your first parenting heartbreak. And yet, you wouldn't go back, not to your silent loom, not to pre-dawn chores, not even to long baths without interruptions. This tiny tyrant, this olive-fingered whirlwind, you'd choose her again and again. Your husband starts bringing guests around more often. You're expected to manage appearances, daughter in clean chitin, hair oiled, not shouting about frogs. You play the part. She doesn't always cooperate. At one gathering, she tries to feed figs to a statue of Hermes. The guests laugh. Your husband doesn't. You explain that she's just spirited. He mutters that she's just spoiled. Tension creeps into the edges of your marriage again. But you keep going. One ordinary morning, you teach your daughter how to grind barley. She presses the grain into the stone. Mimicking your rhythm, you pretend it's magic. Turn, turn, and the bread appears. She grins. That grin is your talisman now. She's 4 when she first asks about death. The neighbor's cat dies. You wrap it in linen. Bury it under the fig tree. She watches. Where did it go? She whispers. You pause. To sleep forever. You say. It sounds poetic enough to comfort you both. Grief will come for her eventually. You know this. But for now, you protect her with stories. And when she's sick, feverish and coughing, you stay up all night, rubbing her chest with warmed oil, whispering nonsense words. The nursemaid brews a potion that smells like regret. She drinks it anyway. She survives. You breathe again. So does she. By the time she's 5, she knows all the household gods. She bows at the hearth each morning. She knows which olive jar hides raisins. She knows how to ask for water without being told. She knows which grown-ups are soft and which aren't. She knows that women live mostly upstairs, and men downstairs, and she already senses that this matters. She doesn't ask why, yet. You dread the day she does. Because how do you explain patriarchy to a child who still thinks the stars are shaped like goats and dolphins? You don't. You wait. You give her time. You hold her close. Let her sit beside you while you spin thread. You tell her, quietly, that she is a thread too, part of a bigger pattern. Not caught in it, part of it. And one night, while brushing her hair, she asks, "Can I be a priestess one day?" You pause. Then, "Yes, maybe, if you're lucky." She smiles. And for that one moment, you both believe it. You wake one morning to find your daughter missing from her bed. Panic sparks in your chest, but before you can shout, you hear laughter outside. There she is, barefoot, in the garden, chasing a rooster with a fig leaf in her hand like a makeshift sword. She's 6 now, a tangle of limbs and scrapes and impossible energy. You catch her, scold her, kiss her forehead, and wonder how it's already been 6 years. Childhood moves fast here, not because it's full of schoolbooks or violin lessons, but because every phase is brief, precious, and loaded with silent expectations. Her world is still small, but it won't stay that way for long. At 6, she's no longer just the girl. She's a person. Her chores begin to shift. No more pretending at spinning. Now she actually helps. Her hands learn the rhythm of the distaff, the pull and release of raw wool becoming thread. She hates it at first, complains that her fingers itch. You smile, remembering your own childhood calluses. One day, she unravels an entire afternoon's work. You don't yell, you just sigh, sit down beside her, and start over. That's how daughters learn, by doing, messing up, and watching what their mothers do in response. She's also finally old enough for the women's festivals. You prepare her for the Desmophoria with the reverence of a high priestess preparing a young acolyte. It's not a light event. It's sacred. Only women attend. Men aren't even allowed to hear what goes on. You pack food for 3 days, whisper instructions, and dress her in your second best chiton. When the time comes, she clutches your hand tightly. The walk to the festival is long, dusty, full of hushed anticipation and little groups of women murmuring prayers or gossiping behind their hands. Someone sings. Another woman carries piglets. You nudge your daughter gently and explain. They go underground first. That's how we begin. Your daughter watches the offerings in silence. She doesn't understand all of it. You didn't either. At her age, the Desmophoria is as much about Demeter as it is about remembering who you were without men watching. The mourning, the fasting, the symbolic decay, then the renewal. It's a rhythm you've come to rely on. That night, your daughter sleeps curled beside you in the communal tent, mouth slightly open, fig sticky fingers wrapped around your wrist. Historians still argue whether girls participated fully in these rites or just observed. In your household, she participates. She'll understand when she's older. For now, it's enough that she's here. Back at home, the seasons shift. You mark them not by calendars, but by olive harvests, goat births, and when the markets start selling pomegranates again. Your daughter's learning to mark time this way too. You catch her one afternoon inspecting a fig tree and saying seriously, "It'll be sweet in 5 more sunrises." She begins to ask bigger questions now. Why do men eat in a different room? Why do I stay upstairs when father has guests? Why can't I run down to the docks like the boys? You answer carefully, honestly, when you can, But you don't sugarcoat it. Because the world sees them as louder, stronger, more important. You say, but that doesn't mean it's true. She nods, chewing that over. Later, you find her instructing a younger servant girl in how to make perfume out of olive oil and crushed herbs. She's got a whole operation going. Tiny vials lined up like soldiers. You recognize that look in her eyes. Determination. Audacity. She's becoming herself. At 7, she learns the household songs. Not just lullabies, but the rhythmic chants passed from woman to woman. Grinding songs, bathing songs, lamentations. You teach her the one for folding linens, the one for oiling the doors, even the cheeky one about an old man whose goat ran off with his wife. She sings that one too loudly. You let her. Fringe tidbit. She also learns to whistle through her fingers, taught by one of the older slaves when no one else is looking. Not exactly proper, but wildly effective at summoning chaos. She runs faster now, eats more, eavesdrops better. One evening, she asks about your own childhood. Did you have dolls? She asks. You did. Terracotta ones, with movable arms. You describe them, and she listens with eyes like saucers. She carves one from bread the next day. It lasts 20 minutes before the dog eats it. At 8, the boundary between child and girl begins to blur. She's taller, leaner, her laugh is lower now, edged with teenage rebellion, even though she's still years away from actual adolescence. You catch her watching the street below from the window more often. Eyes trailing after the merchants, the flute players, the water girls with balanced jugs. Her curiosity has expanded. You know that look. You had it too. But the walls around her remain. You've always known this was coming. The beginning of separation. She's starting to crave a world beyond the gynoecium. Beyond you. One afternoon, she tells you she wants to learn letters. You freeze. Reading and writing aren't part of your everyday world. Sure, some women learn, wealthy priestesses, poetesses, rare daughters of scholars. But you? Your education stopped at recitation and ritual. Letters are not part of your loom-threaded world. Still, you don't say no. You mention it to your husband. He raises an eyebrow but doesn't forbid it. So, you barter with a neighbor's older son. He's training with a scribe. In exchange for a few loaves of honeyed bread and a stitched tunic. He agrees to teach her the alphabet. She carves the letters into wax tablets with the tongue sticking out concentration of a warrior. Alpha, beta, gamma. She's hooked. It's not just novelty, it's power. She realizes she can write her name, then yours. Then curses for imaginary enemies like, mean cousin Myrto who said I smell like fish. She even writes to the gods. A letter to Artemis, hidden in the fig tree hollow. You read it one night while she's sleeping. Please help me never marry someone smelly. And let me run fast forever. Also, please don't make me get boring like grown-ups. You cry, just a little, then tuck the letter back where you found it. Life marches on. At 9, she becomes the unofficial head of the younger children in the household. She organizes pretend feasts, oversees doll funerals, and plays market, using pebbles as currency. You let her run the show. It's practice. She's learning how to manage, to host, to command. Still, she stumbles. Sometimes literally. She trips over her chitin one morning and lands face first in goat dung. You help her up, laughing so hard you nearly drop the wash bucket. She laughs too. Eventually, moments like that are glue. They stick. She starts developing little rituals of her own. Braiding her hair in a specific order. Whispering to her bedroom wall before sleeping. Walking backwards out of the kitchen once a day. You don't ask. You just let her be. Every woman has her own spells. Then come the suitors. No, not for her, yet. But you're reminded of her future when a cousin is married off at 12. The wedding feast is loud, overflowing with honeyed wine and roasted lamb. Your daughter watches from behind your chitin folds. Eyes wide. She's too young. She whispers. You squeeze her hand. Yes, she is. Later, she asks, will I have to marry someone I don't know? You take a breath. Then, maybe, but not now. That seems to settle her, for the moment. But you know the clock has started ticking. You make her new clothes in preparation for her 10th year. A pale blue chitin, embroidered with tiny stars. A ceremonial belt. She twirls in them, grinning. I look like a priestess. You smile. You look like you. And that's better. She turns 10 on a day filled with sun, olives, and a house cat giving birth in the pantry. She names the kittens after the gods. Well, sort of. One is called Aphra Mu. Another is Zeus Jr. And the third? Fishy Demeter. You don't correct her. That night, she doesn't want to go to sleep. Says she feels too old for lullabies now. So instead, you tell her the story of Pandora, but your version. Where curiosity is bravery, not weakness. Where opening the box isn't a mistake, but a choice. She listens quietly. Then, was hope really inside? You say, always. She nods, closes her eyes, and finally sleeps. And as you sit beside her, staring at the moonlight across the floor, you wonder what's next, what this decade will bring. Whether she'll remember these years, this closeness, this garden, these whispered stories in the dark. You hope so. You hope a lot of things. These days, 10 becomes 11 before you can blink. It's not that her face has changed dramatically, but something in the way she holds her head. The way she listens to silence. Tells you she's not a little girl anymore. Not quite a woman, not yet, but definitely someone teetering on the edge of something bigger. Her body's beginning to shift. Nothing drastic, just the early stirrings. A slightly fuller cheek, a longer stride, a certain curve where once there was only coltish flatness. She notices too. One day, she pokes at her chest with an expression of suspicion. Then shouts, "Mother, is this going to keep happening?" You nod solemnly. Yes, and worse. She groans and falls dramatically into the straw mattress. That year, she begins joining you more often when guests come to visit. Not during dinners. Of course, that would be pushing it, but afterwards. When the men retreat to their symposium and the women retire to quieter corners of the house. Your daughter lingers, ears perked like a well-trained dog. She listens to the older women talk, of births and baths, of husbands who snore and sons who break amphory like it's a sport. Occasionally, someone asks her opinion. At first, she freezes, but gradually, she starts answering, tentatively. Then more boldly, she's beginning to find her voice. Mainstream historical fact. In upper-class homes of ancient Athens, girls were often confined mostly to the home but would start learning the responsibilities of adult women, including overseeing slaves, managing supplies, and preparing for eventual marriage, from about age 11 or 12. She starts taking charge of small household tasks. You let her supervise the olive oil jars, making sure they're sealed tight and stored properly. When you have a good week, you let her tally how many lamp wicks you've made. She takes this job extremely seriously, like she's managing the entire Athenian navy. One afternoon, she suggests a new storage system for the loom threads. You resist, because tradition is sacred, but then she organizes everything in neat little bundles by color and thickness. And it actually works. You don't say it out loud, but you're impressed. She beams anyway. She knows. At 12, she becomes a Parthenos, a maiden in the social sense. There's no grand ritual, no banner falls from the ceiling. But there's a palpable shift. Her status in the house changes. She gets a separate water jar, embroidered with women fetching water, because apparently, nothing says, congratulations on puberty, like pottery. She bathes more frequently now. Partly because she likes it. Partly because she's suddenly very concerned with smelling nice. She starts experimenting with her own perfumes, crushing herbs, soaking flowers in oil, even attempting to infuse one with wine. That one stinks. You say nothing. Every month, her body marks time now. You notice the first crimson stain before she tells you. She looks terrified, as if a snake had crawled into her sheets. You pull her close, explain it all gently, then tell her the one thing she really needs to hear. You're not broken. You're becoming powerful. She doesn't believe you yet. But one day she will. Historians still argue whether menstruation changed a girl's role dramatically in Athenian households, but you know from experience, it changes everything. It's not just about blood. It's about boundaries, about watching the world pull her in different directions now. She asks more about the gods. Not the children's stories, but the serious stuff. Why Demeter let Persephone go? Why Artemis never married? Why Athena wears armor and never smiles? You answer what you can. Then she asks, do gods really care about women? You want to say yes. But instead, you say, some of them do, and the rest? We deal with them anyway. At 13, you begin to hear whispers. Your sister-in-law asks if you've thought about good matches. Your neighbor jokes about her son's bride, still being milk-toothed. The marketplace suddenly seems full of teenage girls walking slightly behind older men with appraisal in their eyes. You don't talk to your daughter about marriage yet. Not directly, but you both feel it looming. Quirky tidbit. Some families offered teenage daughters to Artemis in special temple rituals, symbolically dedicating their childhood to the goddess before letting them enter adulthood. Sometimes they dressed like bears. Your daughter thinks this sounds awesome and demands a bear costume. You make her one from old scraps. She parades around the garden, growling. She hasn't grown up completely. Not yet. Still, she begins to withdraw in subtle ways. She spends more time by herself, sometimes staring out the window, sometimes writing strange little poems in wax or drawing elaborate mazes on shards of broken pottery. You don't pry. She's building a self. You notice she avoids certain men in the household now. An uncle who touches too long. A servant who stares too hard. You file this knowledge away. Quietly adjust who goes where. Who works which hours. She doesn't say anything, but she knows you see her. That's enough. She still visits the garden, but now she talks to it like a diary. One day, you hear her say, if I were a tree, no one could marry me. You pretend not to hear, but inside, your heart aches with a complicated pride. She turns 14 during a thunderstorm. Zeus seems to be throwing a full tantrum above your roof. Your daughter lights a lamp and curls beside you like she did when she was little. I think I'm scared, she admits. You tell her. You're allowed to be. That means you're paying attention. Later, when the storm passes, you braid her hair and tell her about the time you nearly got caught stealing figs during a thunderstorm. I thought the gods would strike me down for being greedy. You say, turns out they didn't care. I just slipped and broke a sandal. She laughs until she hiccups. That night, you both fall asleep with the same dream, running barefoot through fig trees. Lightning tracing the sky above. Unafraid. The next season, she begins managing the household ledgers. Just simple tallies at first. How many loaves are baked? How much oil used in a week? Whether the wool stores are running low. She loves numbers. Finds comfort in them. You catch her whispering calculations in her sleep sometimes. She also gets into an argument with your husband. It's not about anything serious, just a misunderstanding over missing honey cakes, but she holds her ground. You expect him to snap. Instead, he stares at her for a long moment, then says, "You're more like your mother than I thought." She smiles, not sweetly, sharply. She's learning how to be heard. One afternoon, while you're combing lice from a younger child's hair, your daughter asks, "Would it be terrible if I never married?" You pause. Say, "It would be strange." Then, "But strange isn't always terrible." You both sit in that silence. Historians still argue whether unmarried women had any real options beyond religious service or being passed between male relatives. But in your home, you imagine a future where your daughter might carve out something different. You won't say it aloud yet, but you're quietly rooting for her. At 15, her voice changes. Not just the tone, though it's lower now. Richer, but her words. She speaks with intention, corrects adults when they get stories wrong, jumps in to explain things to younger girls, starts composing her own songs, tiny epics about everyday things, a runaway goose, a burnt stew, the mysterious disappearance of father's sandals. She sings one during the Thesmophoria. People clap, someone cries, a very old woman asks for the words to be written down. Your daughter says, "Maybe," but you know she already has. Tucked away somewhere. By now, she's no longer called child by anyone. The women call her my dear, girl, young one. Some of the boys in the neighborhood stare too long. You glare them into submission. She just rolls her eyes. One evening, she asks about your own wedding. You tell her the truth. That you didn't know your husband. That you were scared, silent, and angry for a long time. That love was not immediate, it was earned. Built like a wall, one stone at a time. She listens, then asks, "Did it have to be that way?" You say, maybe not, but for me, it was. She nods. Then, I want something different. You nod back. Then, good. Later that night, she stays up sketching on broken tiles by candlelight. You peek over her shoulder. She's drawing a winged woman breaking through a wall. No explanation. Just movement. Freedom. A quiet hope. You don't say anything. You just place a fresh piece of tile beside her. And let her keep going. The year she turns 16. Your house begins to echo differently. It's not louder, just fuller. There's a presence now, like when warm bread fills a room before anyone takes a bite. The women who visit the house linger near her. They ask what she thinks about this or that. One even brings her a spindle with a carved dolphin. For your own household someday. The woman says meaningfully. Your daughter doesn't correct her. She just smiles politely and tucks it away. The loom is hers now. Mostly, she still lets you use it. Of course. But she's started rearranging the patterns. You notice subtle changes, new flourishes in the borders. A bolder choice of color here and there. It's her language. She's saying, I am here, and I will make this mine. Mainstream historical fact. In ancient Athens, weaving wasn't just busywork, it was a woman's public offering. Woven peplos were given to temples, displayed in festivals, and used as family currency in a subtle kind of domestic economy. Your daughter understands this power. She's shaping it, one thread at a time. The house slaves report to her now when you're not available. They don't seem to mind. She's firm but fair, except when she catches one of them using too much olive oil to polish a cup. Then she lectures them like she's a miniature Athena and demands they reconsider their wasteful approach to household excellence. You nearly spit out your wine. At night, she sneaks up to the roof when she thinks no one's watching. You hear her footsteps on the ladder. Hear her sit, breathe, think. Sometimes, if you follow, you'll find her staring up at the stars, whispering words only she understands. One night, she says, I wonder if Artemis gets lonely. You don't answer. The stars do, quietly. Historians still argue whether women in Athens had spiritual agency beyond formal rituals. But you know this. Your daughter speaks to the gods in her own way. And whether they answer or not, she keeps speaking. She gets a marriage offer. You see it coming the moment a neighbor visits twice in the same week. The man is pleasant enough. Older, with a round stomach and good teeth. His mother brings gifts, fig cakes, a delicate little amphora, a suspiciously flattering poem about your daughter's hair. You sit with your husband in the corner of the andron and talk. Mostly about livestock. Then, suddenly, about dowries. You feel your stomach drop. You were hoping for another year. When you bring it up with your daughter, she doesn't panic. She listens, nods, then says, Can I meet him first? This is not common, but you agree. He arrives wearing a chiton too fine for the weather and a nervous smile. Your daughter greets him with calm curiosity. They talk about figs, poetry, the recent grain shortage. She asks him what he thinks about Sappho. He stumbles. She raises an eyebrow. After he leaves, she says, He's polite, but I don't want to marry a man who doesn't read poetry for fun. You hide your grin. You tell your husband. He groans, but he doesn't push it. Your daughter is still yours, for now. Quirky tidbit. Some girls were known to sneak coded messages into their weaving, names, initials, even little phrases. One scholar even speculated that an embroidered border found in a ruin may have read something akin to, He has the feet of a goat. You check your daughter's latest work suspiciously. You start showing her the parts of household management you never wanted to share before. How to settle small disputes between slaves. How to balance between too much hospitality and not enough. How to quietly pay off the fish vendor so he tells you the real price first. She's better at some of it than you expected. Worse at other things, like lying convincingly. You say, if you can't lie, at least learn how to pause long enough to avoid answering. She practices in the mirror. Not long after, she begins joining in the prayers with more authority. You don't lead anymore. She does, especially during the Desmophoria. Her voice cuts through the chanting like flint against stone. The women respect her. You hear one whisper, that girl has a spine made of bronze. You agree. One afternoon, she brings you a drawing. It's a house, not your own. Bigger, strange windows, a roof garden, And at the center, a loom. But one that's been built into a kind of shrine. She says, "If I had my own place, this is what it would look like." You nod slowly. "You'd need 6 slaves to keep that clean." She shrugs. "I'd train them well." There's a secret wish humming behind her words. It's not the house. It's the control. The possibility of building something, however small, with her name stitched into the edges. She writes a wedding song for a cousin's marriage. It's not traditional. Instead of praising the groom's strength and the bride's obedience, it tells the story of a clever woman who tricked a lion into marrying her, then tamed him by teaching him to write poetry. People laugh, but they also listen. Someone claps too long. She turns red, but you know this is what she loves, making people feel something unexpected. Your husband brings up the topic of betrothal again. Quietly, carefully, he says, "If we wait too long, we'll lose our best offers." You say, "Maybe she'll make a better one." He blinks. "From whom?" You just raise an eyebrow. She receives another offer. This time, from a younger man, only a few years older. Son of a merchant, but well read. He comes to the house with a small wooden lyre and asks if she wants to hear a song. She listens, then says, "Sing it to the cat. If she likes it, maybe I'll marry you." He does. The cat blinks slowly. No hissing. This is apparently a good omen. They talk again the next week. And the week after. Eventually, she says to you, "If I have to marry anyone, it might as well be someone who makes the cat purr." You don't ask if it's love. You ask if she feels safe. If she feels seen. If she can still be herself. She nods. That's enough. You begin preparations. There are lists. So many lists. Fabric to gather. Dowry items to pack. Oils to measure. It's exhausting and strange. And you don't cry until you find the small hair ribbon she wore at age 6 stuffed behind a drawer. Historians still argue whether girls had any say in their marriage choices. In your house, she does. Not total control, but a say. A voice. It isn't perfect, but it's better than what you had. That, too, is something. The wedding day arrives. She wears a dress you wove together over months, sun-bleached white with threads of sea blue twisting along the hem. You helped her pin her hair, then stepped back to look. She's radiant, not because of the color or the cut, because she stands tall, fully herself. She walks to the ceremony with her head high. The songs are sung, the vows spoken. A feast follows. Wine flows. Bread breaks. Even the moody uncle dances a little. That night, you lay awake staring at her empty mat. It's not grief. Not exactly. Just space. She visits 3 days later. Walks into the house like she still lives there. Which, in a way, she does. She goes straight to the loom. Touches it like a friend. Then hugs you so hard your spine pops. She says, "He lets me read, even at dinner." You say, "You've trained him well." She grins. Then adds, "And the cat likes him." You nod. That's all that matters. She still sends you notes, tiny scrolls tied with yarn. Sometimes they contain recipes. Other times, fragments of verse. Once, it just read, "I finally understand why you talk to the gods while baking." You keep them all in a jar. She hosts her first dinner. You're invited. The house is warm. Music hums from the walls. The table's set precisely. Too precisely. She's nervous, though she hides it well. The moment the bread hits the table, you know she'll be fine. She takes your hand and whispers, "This isn't what I expected, but it's something I'm building." And you say, "Then it will last." You catch her looking at a girl across the street, barely 9. Shy, peeking through her doorway. Your daughter waves, then whispers, "She reminds me of me." You smile. Then she's in for quite a life. The stars begin to blink overhead. Somewhere, a lyre plays softly. She closes the door gently, like someone sealing a promise. You wake early the next day. The kind of early where the world is hushed in a blue hush. Before the birds decide what kind of morning they're going to sing about. Your bones feel it first, the soft tug of age. The memory of motion. The way your joints whisper instead of shout now. You stretch, not for strength, just to remind yourself you still move. And then you prepare to visit her house again. This time, not for a feast, not for advice, just because she asked you to bring some fig jam and that old bronze spoon she always liked. The one shaped like a leaf. You wrap it in cloth and chuckle. Of all the things to inherit. She greets you at the door with smudges of flour on her elbow and an apron that's seen more adventures than your husband's sandals. Her hair is pinned in a style you used to wear, but messier, as if memory and rebellion have finally made peace. Mainstream historical fact. Married women in classical Athens typically managed their own households. Once wed, a woman's daily sphere shifted, but it didn't shrink. She became the curia of her domestic world, overseeing slaves, arranging meals, and often functioning as the economic engine behind the scenes. Your daughter, you notice, is running a tight little ship. The floors are swept, the storage jars are labeled. Someone's left fresh sprigs of mint tucked behind a windowsill to keep the flies away. And yet, there are signs of her, poetry etched into the wood with a blunt pin. A basket of dyed threads in colors you've never dared try. And a soft, homegrown chaos that feels more alive than polished. She offers you bread. It's slightly burned. You eat it anyway. She asks, "Was it like this for you?" You think for a while before answering. Then say, "Some of it, but I didn't laugh as much." She looks down, smiles quietly. There's a knocking. A neighbor, young, newly married, wants advice about making almond paste. Your daughter launches into a detailed explanation of soaking, crushing, sweetening, and patience. You watch the neighbor's eyes widen. Gratitude. She's becoming a woman others come to. You think, and you feel your chest tighten, not from sadness, but from something like awe. Quirky tidbit. In some Greek households, women left tiny kitchen charms near the hearth, a knotted thread, a carved acorn, a painted chicken leg. Some believed they brought luck, others that they scared off kitchen spirits. You notice a tiny pottery turtle tucked behind her spice jars. She shrugs. It felt right. You spend the afternoon helping her organize wool skeins. They're everywhere, hung like garlands, curled into sleepy knots, sorted by hue, by thickness, by season. As you work, she says, "Do you remember when I spilled dye all over the floor and blamed the cat?" You nod. She didn't walk right for 3 days. You both laugh until your sides hurt. Then there's silence. A soft one. The kind that says, "We've made it through something." Later, her husband returns from the market. He greets her with a kiss to the cheek and a question about lentils. She answers distractedly. Her hands are in a pot of drying herbs. He takes off his sandals, mutters something about fish prices, and offers you a smile that's half shy, half sincere. He's not remarkable, but he's kind, and sometimes that's everything. You return home before sunset. Your house feels a little bigger, a little quieter, but also, somehow, less lonely. You begin weaving again, not for need, for pleasure, and you choose colors you never would have chosen before. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek women had leisure time, or whether their days were consumed by domestic labor. You suspect it wasn't either or. Time was carved, hidden, snuck between duties, like how you find space now between errands to tie in gold threads just because you like how they shimmer. Your husband has mellowed. He no longer pretends to control things. Instead, he drifts from the courtyard to the wine cellar with the slow grace of a man who knows the world has changed, and that it's not about him anymore. He says, "You've become quieter." You reply, "I've just stopped repeating myself." He laughs. Sometimes he sits with you in the evenings, helping wind thread or sampling the olives you soaked in garlic. He tells you about local gossip, whose son is lazy, whose goat got loose, who tried to start a new religion in the middle of the street market. You nod along, but mostly, you think about your daughter, about what she's building. She begins hosting women's gatherings, small ones. Nothing formal. They bring their weaving, their worries, their laughter. There's a rhythm to the visits. Stitch, complain, sip, laugh, stitch again. And amidst it all, your daughter leads, not with arrogance, just gravity. One woman tells her about a dream involving a snake and a fig tree. Your daughter doesn't flinch. She offers an interpretation so elegant, so comforting, that even you are momentarily impressed. The woman leaves lighter. Your daughter doesn't boast. She just adjusts the spindle in her lap and hums a tune you once sang to her while brushing her hair. You start calling her house, the other hearth. Because that's what it's become. A place people gravitate toward. A place people warm their hands near. She writes a small play. Just a scene. Nothing formal. But it's funny. Sharp. In it, a woman argues with the gods over being made female. Why give me a tongue if I can't use it? The character asks. You recognize the phrasing. Something you once said under your breath after a festival. She heard you. She turned it into art. You tell her it's good. Really good. She shrugs. I might write another. Historians still argue whether women wrote in private, if diaries, stories, or prayers ever filled the gaps left in public record. But if so, it would look like this. Scribbled scenes. Stitched metaphors. Songs murmured to oneself while tending stew. She gives birth. You're there. Of course you are. It's long, messy, sacred. The midwife, a stern woman with arms like tree roots, nods at your daughter's stamina. She breathes like a mountain. She mutters, slow and unshakable. When the baby arrives, it's a girl. Your daughter weeps, but not in disappointment. She says, now I can pass it all down. And she will. Over the next months, the house adjusts. The baby learns rhythms, when the rooster crows, when the sun kisses the floor, when songs mean food and when they mean sleep. Your daughter sings constantly. She's not a good singer. But the baby doesn't care. She rocks her near the loom, near the hearth, near the god's shelf where offerings sit like silent witnesses. You hold the baby often. She has your eyes, and your daughter's stubborn little chin. One day, as you swaddle her, your daughter says, I want her to know her worth from the beginning. You reply, then tell her, every day, even when she's screaming. Especially then. Quirky tidbit. In certain rural regions, it was believed that newborn girls should be whispered to by every female relative within the first 3 days, to teach them the language of their line. You spend an entire afternoon doing just that, whispering nonsense and lullabies and tiny secrets about where the sun hides when it rains. You teach the baby to reach for things. She always goes for the shiniest object, usually the bronze spoon. Good taste. Your daughter writes down feeding times in a scroll, then adds notes about how the baby seems to enjoy the smell of basil. You tease her. She's one feeding chart away from founding a new philosophical school. She sticks out her tongue, then writes that down too. The baby begins crawling, then climbing, then causing chaos. Your daughter chases her, then stops mid-panic to recite poetry about hurricanes. You think, she's doing better than I did. And that thought doesn't sting. It soothes. Because maybe that's what this was all for, not to be remembered in statues or scrolls, but to make room for the next pair of hands to reach farther. One evening, the baby, now a toddler, drags you by the hand to the loom. She points. You lift her. She touches the threads, then says, boom. Not quite, loom, but you'll take it. You kiss her forehead and whisper, you'll build empires with these fingers. She giggles, spills olive oil, and your daughter sighs. Well, at least she's observant. You spend more time there now. In that house with the worn lintels and scent of basil. In that second hearth where life keeps unspooling. You're not needed exactly, and that's what makes it perfect. You are wanted, and that is so much better. Some mornings you arrive to the patter of tiny feet. Your granddaughter barreling into your knees like a miniature warrior in a tunic 2 sizes too big. Other days, you're greeted with the gentle rustle of silence. Your daughter humming to herself in the courtyard while tending to a line of laundry that flutters like temple flags. She offers you tea, barely warm, and a seat in the shade. You accept both. The neighbors pass by. Some nod, others stop and chat, and more than once, you catch snippets of a certain phrase. Ask her, she'll know. And you realize they're not talking about you anymore. Mainstream historical fact. In many ancient Greek communities, women earned reputations as midwives, herbalists, and advisors, especially in matters of family, birth, and domestic spirituality. Some, in time, became local fixtures, almost unofficial priests of the everyday. It's a soft kind of power. The kind you only notice when it's missing. Your daughter is becoming that. A quiet axis around which others gently turn. You watch with the amused pride of someone who once burned soup and cried about it. Not that you'll ever tell her that. She invites you to help with a naming ceremony. Not the babies, that's done. This is for a new loom. Yes, The family now has 2 looms. Because apparently this house is multiplying like pomegranates in season. You raise an eyebrow. A loom? She nods. Everything has a spirit. Might as well treat it nicely. You're not going to argue. Not with someone who still remembers which herbs cure hiccups and which ones offend the hearth god. Quirky tidbit. Some women in ancient Greece did indeed name objects in their homes, especially tools of labor like looms, spindles, and even storage jars. They'd whisper blessings to them, sometimes even cradle them during hard seasons as if coaxing luck back into their lives. So you help tie a ribbon around the new loom. You pour a drizzle of honey on the base, sing a made-up hymn under your breath, and tell the loom, behave better than your sister. Your daughter smirks. You never blessed my dolls. You sip your tea. They didn't ask politely. That night, she reads aloud from a scroll, a comedy by Aristophanes. The characters are absurd, loud, delightfully inappropriate. Your granddaughter tries to mimic the lines but mostly just shouts, "Frog, frog," at the top of her lungs until she hiccups from laughter. Later, your daughter confides, "I like the way they mock the gods." You nod. Someone should. Keeps them on their toes. And then the 2 of you sit in the quiet, sewing a tunic from leftover cloth, patching together the pieces in a way that somehow feels like metaphor. The gods may not notice, but you do. Historians still argue whether women participated in intellectual salons or symposia beyond the walls of their homes. Most evidence points to exclusion. But household life tells another story, one of whispered debates over fig prices, heated discussions of midwifery methods, and critiques of temple politics over pickled onions. You remember a neighbor once ranting for 3 days about the quality of temple incense. She might not have had a platform, but she definitely had an audience. Your daughter begins offering reading lessons. Not formally, of course. But 1 girl comes, then 2, then 5, each clutching worn scraps of papyrus, each wide-eyed at the promise of understanding the lines that wrap like vines across the page. You sit near the doorway, pretending not to eavesdrop, but you hear it, the careful pronunciation, the shared delight when a difficult word gives up its meaning like a stubborn walnut. The sighs of relief and little celebratory claps. You think, they'll remember this, and maybe they won't write about her, but they'll pass on what she taught them. 1 girl stays behind after a lesson. She's older, quieter. She doesn't ask about letters. She asks about the gods. Specifically, she asks why her prayers haven't worked. Your daughter doesn't offer platitudes, doesn't blame the girl, doesn't speak of divine plans or long-lost omens. She just says, sometimes they don't listen, and sometimes we don't ask the right way, and sometimes it's not about them. The girl nods, leaves lighter. Your daughter sighs, and says, "Do you think that was the right thing to say?" You answer, "Yes, because it was honest." And that's something even the gods struggle with. Your granddaughter starts asking questions too. Why is the moon following me? Why do spiders know how to make webs? Why don't we eat dessert first? You do your best. For the moon, because it likes you. For the spiders, because they've had more practice than we have. And for dessert, because then dinner would feel jealous. She considers all 3 answers with a suspicious squint, then accepts them like a philosopher shrugging off the paradoxes of existence. There's something about seeing the world through a child's questions that makes everything feel new again, even the things you've said 1,000 times before. Quirky tidbit. In some Greek households, it was customary to tell children stories about inanimate objects having secret lives. That socks argued, that chairs danced when no one looked, that stars gossiped. It was a gentle way of keeping curiosity alive and behavior manageable. You tell your granddaughter that her sandals argue about who gets to be on the left foot today. She giggles and insists on switching them back and forth 5 times. She's weird. You love it. One day, your daughter gets quiet. It's a soft quiet, the kind that fills the room without noise. You notice the basket of wool untouched, her hands still, her eyes unfocused. You ask. She hesitates, then says, "I had a dream about you, but you weren't old." You raise an eyebrow. "Were we fighting?" "No," she says. "You were dancing." And for a moment, you remember, not the dream, but the body you used to live in. The one that twirled without creaking. The one that once laughed so hard it pulled a rib. You say, "Dreams are generous." She nods. "I think it was a gift." Later, you bring out the clay figurine. The one you made decades ago. The one with the crooked head and the misshapen arms that you once swore had mystical properties. You offer it to her. For the other hearth, you say. She takes it, reverently, places it on the ledge above her kitchen. And the house feels fuller. Like a line of poetry just found its missing word. Historians still argue whether domestic rituals carried spiritual weight, or were simply habit layered over time. But you've seen too many coincidences. Too many dreams that spoke truths. Too many spoons that vanished when they were needed most. Maybe the divine isn't in marble statues. Maybe it's in the way a house remembers the people who loved inside it. The seasons shift. The garden changes. The shadows stretch differently. You begin teaching your granddaughter to weave. Not properly. Just finger games and color sorting. She's hopelessly distracted. But every so often, her tiny hands fall into rhythm. You say, "You'll get there." She says, "I already did." And you realize, she might be right. She doesn't need your exact path. She needs your permission to wander off it. So you let her. And when she accidentally turns a perfectly good ball of wool into a chaotic tangle that resembles a very soft hedgehog, you name it, Hector, and give it a place of honor on the shelf. Your daughter writes a small guide, Household Wisdoms. She calls it. It's part recipe book, part spiritual musings, part parenting notes. She doesn't publish it, just keeps adding to it. But one night, you flip through, and you see your words, your jokes, your warnings, your hopes, all captured between ink and onion skin parchment. You close it gently, and say, to no one, she was listening. The older you get, the more mornings taste like rosemary and caution. Your joints creak louder than your floorboards. And you're convinced your elbows hold grudges from a past life. Still, there's a rhythm now, less urgent, more aware. You rise before the house stirs. Boil a little barley water. And sit where the sun first touches the courtyard stones. There's something soothing about watching light stretch awake before everyone else. Your daughter comes out eventually. Barefoot, clutching a half-made wreath of olive twigs. She's planning a festival offering, one of the smaller seasonal rites. Not the citywide chaos. This one's for Artemis. Technically, it's for the protection of young girls. Which makes sense, since your granddaughter has recently declared herself the fastest person alive and attempted to race a donkey. The donkey won, but only just. Mainstream historical fact. Artemis was widely worshipped in Greek households, especially by women and girls. Offerings included honey cakes, woven garlands, and even locks of hair given during key transitions like puberty or marriage. While major temples conducted grand ceremonies, home altars were just as meaningful, intimate, sincere, laced with daily emotion. You help weave the last bits of time into the wreath. You hum a tune neither of you can name. It feels like memory, but smells like possibility. Your granddaughter appears in the doorway, carrying her doll like a soldier carries a comrade. She needs protection too, she insists. You nod solemnly and place a single fig leaf in the doll's sash. That makes it official, sacred. Obviously, your daughter starts experimenting with her own variations on festival food. The honey cakes are now shaped like owls. Not quite traditional, but adorable. She bakes extra and distributes them to neighbors. One neighbor insists the owl cakes cured her headache. Another says they attracted ants. But that's a different blessing entirely. The house becomes a hub, not a temple, but close. People drop by to borrow measuring cups, to ask for advice on ankle pain, to debate whether dreams of goats mean money or misfortune. Your daughter handles most of it. You just sit nearby, the living version of a gently blinking statue, sipping fennel tea. Did you always know this is what being a mother would become? She asks one evening. You say, no, I thought it would end at dinner. She smiles, then adds, it never ends. Does it? Nope. It just gets weirder. That night, you have a dream. You're walking through a house. But it isn't yours. The walls breathe. The floor sings. Every room smells like someone you loved. You keep walking. You find a baby crying. You pick it up. And suddenly it's your daughter. Then your mother. Then you. You wake up with damp eyes and a profound urge to find your shoes. You don't tell anyone, but you do spend the day tying bundles of herbs with extra care. There's a calm to the routine now, preparing the altar, dabbing oil behind your ears, arranging stones in a pattern only you remember the meaning of. It doesn't matter if the gods are watching. Sometimes, you think, they gave up surveillance years ago. But habit is a holy thing. Historians still argue whether women developed private forms of theology distinct from state religion, mystic household practices passed down orally, shaped by experience, mood, and proximity to cats. While documentation is scarce, the evidence lingers in bone charms, fire ashes, and the odd blessing scrawled on the back of a soup recipe. Your daughter begins crafting protective amulets, little sachets of lavender, rue, and salt tied with blue thread. She leaves them under pillows, inside sandals, in the corners of windows. You tease her. If anything does try to curse us, it's going to trip over all your charms and sprain its ankle. She shrugs. Good. We'll feed it and teach it to weave. You think, that's your child. All right. Your granddaughter now insists on her own altar. It's mostly pebbles and buttons and half a pomegranate. But she guards it like a priestess. She once scolded the family cat for sneezing near it. The cat sneezed again out of spite. You wonder what she'll grow into. Quirky tidbit. Some Greek children, especially girls, were included in small rituals early on, not just to watch, but to participate. They might scatter flower petals, light incense, or chant little refrains. This was part religious education, part playtime, and possibly part parental desperation. Your granddaughter makes up hymns. One of them is just her yelling, "Please and thank you, Artemis," on repeat. Another features a dance that includes hopping on one foot while pretending to be a goat. You approve of both. You catch your daughter writing again, this time, a letter to a friend in another village. She's explaining the festival offerings, the owl cakes, the wreaths, the way her daughter named a beetle, Zeus, and now refuses to step on it even when it crawls into her sandal. She reads part of the letter aloud. You listen, and for a moment, you hear echoes, not of your voice, but of every voice before you. Women who sat in courtyards like this one, who whispered instructions, who held babies and secrets and hope. You think, we are not eternal. But our advice is, the seasons keep turning. The olives ripen, fall, get crushed into oil. The winds shift, cooler now. Your bones announce the coming of autumn before the trees do. You light a little extra incense in the mornings, just to ward off what the breeze carries. Your daughter surprises you with a new robe, deep blue, lined with tiny stitched constellations. You're the sky now, she says. You snort. I was hoping to be a chair. Too late. The robe is warm. You wear it like armor. One day, a stranger arrives, a woman from another village. She's heard of your daughter, wants help with a difficult birth. Your daughter hesitates. I've never handled one that far along, she says. You answer without thinking. You won't be alone. She glances at you. You see the little girl who once thought thunder was angry sky stomping. Now she's the one people call when life teeters between two worlds. And so you go with her. The journey is long. Your knees complain like elderly critics at a bad play. But you arrive. The birth is hard. The woman cries out. Time slows, then accelerates. Your daughter moves with certainty and grace. She murmurs things you once murmured to her. She improvises where needed. She holds. She waits. She breathes. And when the baby comes, slippery and red and impossibly loud, she smiles. You wipe your eyes on your sleeve. You helped. But she did it. Historians still argue whether women in ancient Greece ever became midwives through formal training, or whether it was strictly an oral tradition passed matrilineally. The answer, as usual, is probably both, and also neither. And also, depends who's asking. But in this moment, no one's asking. The baby is here. The world is slightly better. And your daughter is now the person someone else will remember when they need to be brave. You return home, exhausted, aching, but proud. Your granddaughter throws petals at your feet. You're back. You collapse into your favorite chair like a fallen hero. The robe rustles like myth. You're the best grandma, she declares. You point at your daughter. She's better. Your granddaughter considers, then nods. You're both the best. Fair enough. That night, There's a feast. Not because of a holiday. Just because life occasionally demands cheese and dancing and slightly too much honey. The neighbors come. The house glows. You sit beside the hearth and watch 3 generations braid each other's hair. Spill cider. And retell stories wrong on purpose just to make each other laugh. And for a moment, just one exquisite moment, you let yourself believe that this, right here, is enough. More than enough. You wake to the sound of a chicken having a crisis. Not unusual, but today it feels especially personal, as if the chicken knows something you don't. You shuffle out to the courtyard to investigate, only to discover your granddaughter attempting to tie a laurel crown around its head. She's the queen of clucks. She explains. You nod, because there's really no better response. Breakfast is slow. Bread, olives, that last sliver of salted fish that keeps migrating from one plate to another. Your joints ache the way old temples creak, but it's a familiar discomfort. You move through it like a priestess through incense smoke. Outside, there's a change in the air. Harvest season is near, which means the Thesmophoria is coming. Mainstream historical fact. The Thesmophoria was one of the most significant festivals celebrated by ancient Greek women. Especially married ones, dedicated to Demeter and her daughter Persephone. It revolved around fertility, agriculture, and the sacred cycles of life and death. And, here's the kicker, men weren't allowed. The festival lasted several days and involved secluded rituals, strange symbols, fasting, feasting, and what modern scholars cautiously call symbolic fertility rites. What actually happened during those ceremonies? Well, historians still argue whether the more secretive parts included jokes, drama, even ribald parodies of male behavior. Some think it was equal parts serious spirituality and gloriously chaotic slumber party. You've participated before, but it's been years. This time, you're watching your daughter prepare to go. She's never attended on her own. She packs dried figs, warm cloaks, a flask of wine, and something you recognize as your old carved comb. For luck, she says. She's nervous. You tell her it's normal. Everyone's nervous the first time they're invited to join the mystery and mischief of goddesses. Your granddaughter is devastated she can't go. But I'm practically grown. You tell her, when you've gone 3 months without calling a beetle a god. We'll talk. That doesn't help. She sulks for an hour and draws angry potatoes on the walls. You send your daughter off with blessings whispered into her hair. You press a lemon balm sachet into her palm. For calm, you say, "Will they like me?" She asks. They already do. You're their kind. She smiles, and the years fall off her face for a moment. She looks like the girl who used to insist on sleeping with her sandals on in case she needed to run to war at night. You watch her go, and then you wait. The Thesmophoria unfolds over 3 days. In theory, in practice, it begins with awkward greetings, strained smiles, and a lot of figuring out how to sleep on straw mats without offending your spine. But soon, rituals take over. First, there's fasting, not the dainty skipping a snack type, but deep, deliberate fasting meant to honor Demeter's grief over losing Persephone. Women sit in silence, wrapped in cloaks, avoiding luxuries. Then come the offerings. Symbolic objects are placed in the earth, often things that have rotted slightly. Piglets, cakes, pine cones, sometimes even phallic-shaped bread. It's a symbolic burial, honoring death to spark rebirth. And after that? Well, that's when it gets lively. Your daughter later tells you the other women taught her songs she'd never heard before, half-spoken, half-chanted, carrying layers of meaning that wrapped around your bones. Some verses were likely centuries old. Others were just made up to tease someone about her snoring. Quirky tidbit. Some sources suggest that women at the Thesmophoria may have staged comic plays mocking men, possibly inverting traditional roles or using obscene humor to break tension. It was their one sacred space to let loose, laugh hard, and worship in a way that felt wildly freeing. She describes the warmth of the fires, the scent of roasting grain, the way laughter echoed across the hills like it belonged there. And she tells you about the silence. Too. There was a moment, night 2, when everything went still. No wind, no birds, no coughs, just the sound of breathing and the weight of countless women sitting in a circle, holding something invisible but shared. She felt it. You nod. You felt it, too. When she returns, she's tired but radiant. Your granddaughter tackles her at the gate. "I made a song while you were gone," she declares. She performs it. It mostly involves clapping, humming, and shouting Demeter like soup at random intervals. You applaud like it's the Iliad. Later, over wine and lentils, your daughter says, "I think I understand now what you always meant about women making space for each other." You smile. "We have to. No one's giving it to us." And that space, you both know, doesn't disappear after the festival ends. It lingers, in how she listens more intently, how she takes her daughter's questions seriously, how she sits beside you in the quiet evenings with a new reverence for the ache in your hands. The days pass. The harvest begins. You help where you can, shelling beans, drying herbs, telling stories while pretending not to supervise everyone else's techniques. Your granddaughter begins recording your recipes on wax tablets. Her version of your lentil soup includes instructions like, "Add beans until the ancestors whisper yes." Not wrong. Honestly, you find yourself doing less, but watching more, and oddly, it feels like doing more. There's a peace in being the one who remembers, who holds old patterns and repeats them just enough for others to pick them up. You're not leading anymore, you're echoing, and the echo is strong. Your daughter hosts a gathering, a mini version of the Desmophoria for local women who couldn't make the full journey. They share bread, stories, laughter. They place their own small offerings in the ground behind the house. One woman cries, another sings. Your daughter watches it all, hands clasped in her lap, tears in her eyes. You lean in and whisper, "You're doing it." Doing what? Becoming the kind of woman others feel safe near. She doesn't answer, but she reaches for your hand. The night ends with laughter, some dancing, and a small fire in the courtyard where someone accidentally burns a sandal. Your granddaughter calls it a sacred accident. She's not wrong. Historians still argue whether the Desmophoria held political power for women beyond religion. Some suggest that these gatherings created informal networks of influence, ways for women to share strategies, shape opinions, and even nudge policy through the men in their households. Whether or not it was true then, it feels true now. The bonds formed in that circle ripple outward. The woman who cried brings you a jar of olives the next week. Another starts tutoring your granddaughter in reading. A third helps your daughter fix the roof. The house becomes a node in a web you didn't realize had been weaving itself all along. You think of your mother, of the stories she told, of the ones she didn't, of the time she whispered. You won't know what kind of woman you are until you see who listens when you speak. Now you know, and more importantly, so does your daughter. One morning, you catch her teaching your granddaughter how to prepare an offering. She lights the incense slowly, reverently. She murmurs a blessing, and she teaches the child to whisper, not shout. "You don't need to raise your voice," she says. "The gods already know your name." The days grow shorter, the sun dipping earlier behind the hills, turning the sky a wash of burnt orange and faded violet. You sit by the hearth, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. The air carries the scent of dried lavender and fresh pine resin, a little gift from your daughter, who's been experimenting with crafting oils and perfumes. She calls it ancient aromatherapy, but you suspect it's just an excuse to play with bottles and jars. You watch your granddaughter chase shadows across the courtyard, her laughter light and endless. She pauses, plucks a sprig of thyme, and holds it like a treasure before tucking it into her pocket. The rhythm of your days has settled into something deeper now, a slow hum beneath the noise of the world. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Greek women's roles often shifted with the seasons. Planting, harvesting, weaving, and managing household resources were not merely chores but integral parts of the family economy and community survival. Many women took charge of domestic production, including weaving cloth, preparing foodstuffs, and managing slaves or servants, which gave them quiet authority in daily life. Today, your daughter is focused on weaving, a skill passed down through generations. Her hands move like dancers, looping threads into patterns that tell stories. She weaves a garment for her daughter, one embroidered with symbols you both recognize: the owl for wisdom, the olive branch for peace, and a small lightning bolt tucked into the hem, because your granddaughter insists it's for power. Quirky tidbit: Some scholars speculate that ancient Greek women's weaving was more than practical, it was a form of storytelling. Even secret communication. Patterns might encode personal histories, family lineage, or coded messages. So, when your daughter weaves that lightning bolt, she might be sending a silent message to the future. You wonder about the stories woven into your own life. The invisible threads you carry. How many secrets have been stitched into the edges of your clothes? The hems of your thoughts? You hear your granddaughter's footsteps behind you. She holds a handful of wildflowers, a mismatched bouquet of daisies, wild garlic, and something that looks suspiciously like a dandelion puff. She hands you the bouquet with a shy smile. It's for the hearth, she says. You nod, placing the flowers in a simple clay vase beside the fire. The house feels full. You think of the many generations before you who did this same thing, offering beauty, life, and hope to the heart of the home. Your daughter is preparing for a festival honoring Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home. The city's temples are crowded, but the real celebrations happen quietly within houses like yours. She explains to your granddaughter the importance of tending the fire, the sacred flame that must never go out. You don't just keep the house warm, she says, you keep the family alive. You remember the days when your own mother taught you this, lighting a lamp before dawn, whispering prayers as the flame flickered. Historians still argue whether Hestia's worship was primarily a public or private affair. Some evidence suggests grand public ceremonies, while other records emphasize daily household rituals, underscoring the goddess's deeply personal role. You watch your daughter and granddaughter tend the fire together, passing the flame from one candle to another with quiet care. It's a small ritual, but it feels monumental. Later, your daughter shares a curious find, a collection of old family letters from an ancestor who lived in a distant city-state. They describe the challenges of balancing household duties with civic life, the hidden strength of women who influenced politics from behind the scenes. The letters speak of secret meetings, whispered alliances, and subtle power plays. Quirky tidbit. There's a tale about a woman named Aspasia, who wasn't just a philosopher's lover but an intellectual powerhouse in her own right, influencing Athenian politics through conversation and wit. While she lived slightly later, her example hints at the unrecognized political savvy many women possessed. You ponder the difference between visible power and invisible influence. Your granddaughter interrupts your thoughts with a question about the stars. She's convinced the patterns in the night sky are messages from the gods, each constellation a story waiting to be decoded. You smile, remembering how you used to gaze upward and wonder the same thing. You tell her a story about Orion, the hunter, and Artemis's protective embrace. She listens intently, eyes wide. You wonder if the stories you pass on will shape her as deeply as those you inherited. At night, the fire crackles softly, shadows dancing on the walls. You feel the weight of all those who came before you, the women who tended fires, wove stories, and carried the world in their hands. You think about your own place in this long line, and you feel, against the slow fading of light, that you belong. Historians still argue about how women's religious roles intersected with their social status, whether their spiritual authority translated into tangible social power, or if it was confined within the home's walls. The truth likely lies in the nuanced spaces between public and private life. As you settle under a woolen blanket, the scent of pine and lavender mingling with smoke, your granddaughter yawns and curls up beside you. You whisper, "We keep the flame burning." She murmurs back, "Always." And you both drift into a sleep woven from stories, stars, and soft shadows. You wake to the soft patter of rain on the roof, a gentle, steady rhythm that makes the world feel quieter, smaller, cozier. Outside, the earth drinks deeply, green shoots rising after the dry heat. Inside, the smell of damp stone mingles with the faint aroma of baked barley bread cooling on the windowsill. Your granddaughter is curled up on the bench, a thin blanket pulled over her legs. She's awake but staring out the window, her mind clearly somewhere far away. You wrap your own cloak tighter around your shoulders, the wool scratchy but comforting. The weather feels right for stories. Mainstream historical fact: in ancient Greece, weather and seasons weren't just natural phenomena, they were deeply tied to myth and ritual. Rain was often seen as a blessing from Zeus, a sign that the gods were watching and providing. Festivals and agricultural activities closely followed seasonal changes, intertwining life and belief. Your daughter is preparing for the Panathenea festival, an event that dominates the city's social calendar. It's a celebration of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, protector of the city. The festival includes athletic contests, sacrifices, processions, and the famous weaving of the peplos, a large, ornate garment presented to Athena's statue. This year, your daughter has been chosen to help weave the peplos. You can see the pride mixed with anxiety in her eyes. It's a significant honor, but also a heavy responsibility. The peplos must be perfect. Quirky tidbit. The weaving of the peplos wasn't just a craft, it was a competitive, collaborative event. Women from prominent families gathered to create the garment, often singing songs and sharing stories as they worked. Some historians suggest the event doubled as a subtle power play, showcasing a family's wealth and status through textile quality and design. Your granddaughter watches your daughter with awe, asking endless questions about the goddess Athena and the festival's rituals. You can tell she's soaking it all in, her imagination lighting up with visions of chariots, warriors, and shining armor. You help your daughter gather the necessary materials, fine wool, dyed with colors made from plants and minerals. The dyeing process itself is an art, a blend of chemistry and tradition, with recipes passed down through generations. Historians still argue about how much influence women had in the political symbolism of the Panathenea. While men dominated the public ceremonies, women's participation in weaving and ritual was crucial, creating a complex interplay between gender and civic identity. As your daughter works on the loom, your granddaughter begins her own project, a small tapestry depicting their family's story. She threads scenes of harvest, festivals, and quiet moments at home. You watch them both, feeling a connection that transcends time. Later, at the festival's procession, you join the crowd along the city's streets. The air is thick with incense and excitement. You glimpse your daughter among the women carrying the peplos, her face calm and proud. The crowd cheers as the statue of Athena is adorned. Your granddaughter claps enthusiastically, declaring she wants to be a weaver just like her mother. You smile, remembering your own youth and the many festivals you witnessed. The day fades into evening, lanterns flickering, voices lowering into quiet conversations. You think about the threads woven into your life, the stories, the rituals, the moments shared across generations. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe that festivals like the Panathenea functioned as social glue, reinforcing not just religious beliefs but also community bonds, identity, and even political order. You feel the weight and the lightness of that truth. As night deepens, you reflect on the role of women as keepers of tradition, carriers of culture, and silent shapers of history. And as you drift off to sleep, the rain still tapping its steady beat, you dream of looms and threads, gods and goddesses, and the endless story woven by those who came before. Morning light filters through the olive trees, dappling the courtyard with gold and shadow. You hear the familiar clatter of pottery, your granddaughter practicing the delicate art of vase painting. She's determined to capture the stories you told her last night about gods, heroes, and women who shaped the world in quiet ways. You sip on your watered-down wine, savoring its sharp bite as you watch her brush sweep across the clay surface. It's oddly soothing, this slow, precise movement. Mainstream historical fact: vase painting was one of the few artistic outlets accessible to women in ancient Greece. Often done in the domestic sphere, women's participation in pottery decoration wasn't just about art, it reflected social roles, religious beliefs, and family stories. Many vases depict mythological scenes, some featuring female figures in prominent roles, which may hint at the values and aspirations of the women who made or owned them. Your granddaughter's favorite subjects are the heroines, the clever Atalanta, the brave Penelope, and the mysterious Medea. She insists they're more interesting than the gods. You can't argue with that. Quirky tidbit. Some vases include humorous or even risque images, suggesting that women's artistic expression wasn't always solemn or pious. There's even speculation that some vase painters included hidden jokes or coded messages for those in the know, a sort of ancient Easter egg. Your daughter is busy preparing for a symposium, an event where men gather to drink, debate philosophy, and enjoy performances. Women don't attend these gatherings openly, except for the hired entertainers, courtesans, or slaves. But your daughter has been quietly teaching your granddaughter about the speeches and ideas discussed there. Because knowledge is power, even when it's kept at arm's length. Historians still argue about the extent to which women influenced or participated in intellectual life. Some believe that women's roles were strictly confined to the home, while others point to indirect ways women shaped philosophy and politics, through education, conversation, and social networks. You overhear your granddaughter reciting fragments of speeches, mixing them with her own questions about justice and courage. You realize she's already weaving her own ideas into the fabric of the world. Later, you join a small gathering of women to prepare offerings for the next religious ceremony. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh and rosemary. You help grind incense, arrange flowers, and whisper prayers in voices low and steady. The ceremony honors Artemis, goddess of the hunt and protector of women in transition, girls becoming women, mothers, and elders. It's a festival of rites and passage, where girls learn to carry themselves differently, and women renew their vows to community and kin. Your granddaughter listens closely as women share stories of their own passages: first menstruation, marriage, childbirth. The stories are not just tales but lessons, warnings, and celebrations. You tell her about your own mother's quiet strength, and how she taught you resilience without ever raising her voice. Quirky tidbit: some rites of Artemis involved playful competitions and even mock battles, highlighting the goddess's fierce independence and the community's acceptance of female strength and autonomy. As night falls, the gathering disperses, leaving you alone with flickering torchlight and the faint hum of cicadas. You think about the layered lives of women, woven from faith, art, family, and resistance. Historians still debate how much of women's spiritual and cultural influence seeped into the political spheres dominated by men. The answer may lie in the whispers and echoes passed down through generations. You close your eyes, feeling the pulse of the past in your breath, the heartbeat of women who lived, loved, and shaped their world in ways both seen and unseen. The sun sets slowly, painting the sky in soft pinks and deep purples, while a cool breeze stirs the olive branches overhead. You sit quietly in the courtyard, the familiar scent of oregano and thyme mingling with the fading warmth of the day. Your granddaughter leans against your side, her eyes heavy but still sparkling with curiosity. The stories you've shared linger between you like a gentle song. You feel the steady rhythm of life here, the slow turn of seasons, the unchanging rituals, the weaving of daily moments into something enduring. Mainstream historical fact: by the classical period, the lives of many Greek women remained largely centered on the home and family. Yet their influence was profound in religious practice, household management, and cultural transmission. Though often excluded from formal political life, women's roles in maintaining social continuity and religious tradition were crucial to the stability of Greek city-states. Your daughter prepares a final meal for the family before the long journey to visit relatives in a distant polis. It's simple fare: fresh bread, olives, figs, and goat cheese, yet it feels rich, a reminder that nourishment comes in many forms. Quirky tidbit: some ancient Greek households had small shrines to Hestia right in the kitchen or courtyard hearth, where women offered daily prayers and libations. These humble rituals underscored the sacredness of home life, often overlooked in grand histories but essential to everyday survival. As twilight deepens, you watch your granddaughter tuck herself into bed, clutching a small woven charm embroidered with symbols of protection: an owl, a dove, and a flame. You feel a quiet pride, knowing these stories and traditions will carry her forward, just as they have carried you. Historians still debate how the shifts of empire, war, and cultural change altered women's status over time, while some argue that Hellenistic and later Roman periods offered new opportunities for women. Others see continuity in their domestic and religious roles. The night deepens, and you find yourself reflecting on the paradox of women's lives in ancient Greece, a blend of restriction and resilience, invisibility and influence. You think of the countless women who walked these same paths, their voices soft but unyielding, their presence a steady thread through history's tapestry. Outside, the stars begin to shimmer, constellations telling their age-old stories of gods, heroes, and mortals alike. You close your eyes and breathe in the cool night air, feeling the pulse of time beneath your skin. In this moment, you are part of a living story, a story spun through centuries. Carried in hands, hearts, and hearts. And with that, you drift into sleep, the gentle hum of night wrapping around you like a soft blanket. The day slips quietly into night, the world softening around you like a well-worn quilt. You can feel your breath slow, your muscles relax, and your mind begin to float free from the busyness of waking life. The stories of ancient Greek women, their quiet strength and enduring grace, settle gently in your thoughts. They are not just figures of the past, they are companions on your journey to rest, reminding you that resilience often comes in the softest forms. Imagine the flicker of candlelight in a stone courtyard, the low murmur of prayers whispered to Hestia, the warmth of a child's hand in yours, and the endless dance of stars above. These moments, small and seemingly ordinary, hold the power to connect us across time and space. Let the tension drain from your body, the weight of the day lifting like morning mist. There is peace in knowing that life's most profound stories are woven not only in grand events but in the tender, everyday acts of love, care, and remembrance. Now, as you sink deeper into rest, carry with you the legacy of those who came before, the women who tended fires, spun stories, and held worlds in their hands. Their whispers become a lullaby, soft and steady, guiding you toward dreams filled with light, strength, and quiet magic. Sleep well, you are part of something timeless.